Прийшли окупанти до нас в Україну, форма новенька, воєнні машини, та трохи поплавився їх інвентар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Російські танкісти сховались в кущі, щоб лаптем посьорбати довбані щі, та трохи у чах перегрівся навар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Приперли зі сходу до нас барани для восстановлення
великої страни.
Найкращий пастух баранячих отар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Їх доводи всяке озброєння різне, потужні ракети, машини залізні, у нас на всі доводи є коментар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Вони захопити хотіли нас зразу, а ми зачаїли на орків образу з російських бандитів, робить примар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Російська поліція справи заводить, там вбивцю рашистів ніяк не знаходить, хто винен, що в нашому полі глухар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Веде пропаганду кремлівський урод, слова пропаганди ковтає народ, тепер нове слово знає цар.
Байрактар.
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 Yes.
The Leaf Spring Army sends its regards.
Hello everyone, I'm the Enforcer, and I'm accompanied by Enforcer Matt.
And good evening, folks. It's Enforcer Matt, and welcome back to day 1128 of the War News stream. And today we have massive news that there's been a massive Russian surrender in Toretsk today of historic proportion. Also, we have seen Russia threaten Finland and Sweden with a military response, and also France is deploying military officials to Ukraine as we speak. And there's a ton of news to cover today, and it's good to see you all once again.
And of course, we're going to be covering the past 24 hours of news from around the world, but particularly from the battlefields of Ukraine, as we have gotten significant breaking news from the area of the city of Toretsk that a massive Russian surrender has occurred within the southern flank of the city, as dozens of Russian soldiers were encircled, surrounded, and forced to surrender under threat of total annihilation by the Ukrainian armed forces. Once again, denoting that the Ukrainian armed forces are advancing rapidly within the southern flank, and it is believed at this point that the central area of the city is near to being completely encircled by the Ukrainian armed forces. We have also been able to see in other major news that the Russian Federation has attempted to reassert the initiative in the area of the city of Pokrovsk by conducting, well, I keep choking on my spit nearly for some reason, counteroffensives of their own. We have been able to see that the Russian Federation's attack columns have been completely wiped out over the course of those attacks, and it appears that the Ukrainians, even through the Russian attempt to restabilize their front lines and once again get back onto the offensive, have failed, and the Ukrainian armed forces are still on the offensive against the Russian army in that direction, and is continuing to push them further back and towards the town of Seladove. We have also been able to hear in major news as well that the Ukrainian armed forces have continued to make ground in the area of the region of Belgrade, as the Ukrainian armed forces are continuing to advance deeper into the region, and while it is not as large or sweeping an offensive as the one inside the Kursk Oblast last year, it does appear to be a heavy diversionary effort for the Russian armed forces, as it appears that Putin is considering this to be a critical emergency for Russian state defense. Not only that, we've been able to hear in other major news from other regions that it appears that the Kavkaszkaya oil pipeline has been completely destroyed, as the pumping station has been rendered practically inoperable, and due to the blazing hot fires from the oils that burned at the pumping station, it appears that almost all mechanical equipment, as well as the actual storage tanks, have also been completely wiped out as well. Every single last one of them, to a significant degree. Meanwhile, we have also been able to hear that the French and the British are now unified in conducting support for the state of Ukraine and are sending military liaisons into the country at this very moment to be able to help the Ukrainians in continuing to fight the war, regardless of the circumstances, until the Russian Federation is brought to its knees and is able to negotiate on a reasonable standing. We have also been able to hear that the Russian Federation violated the energy ceasefire overnight once again, and the state of Ukraine will now be providing information that is clear and foolproof, according to the Ukrainian state, about the Russians' attacks on energy infrastructure within the city of Dnipro. Simultaneously, the Russian Federation has also stated that they will be taking direct action against the nations of Finland and Sweden for their direct involvement in NATO exercises, and also their joining of NATO that happened around a year and a half ago at this point. Meanwhile, inside of the Middle East, not Southern Europe, but inside of the Middle East, we were able to hear that the Israelis are continuing their military operations against Hamas and Hezbollah, but most importantly today, Yemeni Houthis fire ballistic missiles at the state of Israel. Those missiles were intercepted by Arrow 3 anti-ballistic missile interceptors based at the port of Eilat. We have also been able to hear that the United States Air Force and Navy has continued their air operations against the Yemeni Houthis within Western-controlled Houthi Yemen, and we have also been able to hear that those airstrikes have been resulting in significant successes, at least at this point. Official confirmation has come out from the United States government today, also confirming that the B-2 bombers sent to Diego Garcia are not meant for the Yemeni Houthis, but they are in fact meant for the Islamic Republic of Iran, and future air campaigns that appear to be inevitable at this point, as the 2-month deadline is now ticking away for the Iranians to be able to give up their nuclear weapons programs and attempt to denuclearize. Meanwhile, we've also seen that the USS Carl Vinson, underway to the Middle East, was harassed today by Russian maritime patrol aircraft flying only several hundred yards away from the flight deck of the aircraft carrier. We have also been able to hear that the United States of America has reinvigorated its mineral deal with some rather insane terms, to be entirely honest, and we've also been able to hear that Putin has now announced that he will be deploying more Russian forces into the Arctic, and has also claimed that he believes that the President of the United States' assertion that the United States will invade and annex Greenland may actually be serious and a reality, although once again, every time Putin opens his mouth, he's lying, so who knows. But nevertheless, we do have a major amount of news to cover today, and these are only the major pieces, mind you. We didn't cover everything. It just took that long to tell y'all exactly what's going on in the big picture, not in the minutia. So I bet all of y'all can get an idea. Today was a fairly large news day by every single aspect. Moving on into the front lines over in Ukraine, and talking about the significant news that was happening there, we were able to hear that the Russian Federation's armed forces were completely annihilated on the southern flank of Toretsk today, once again forced back into a retreat, and what we are nearly hearing is a rout in the southern flank, and it appears that the Ukrainian armed forces were able to encircle and capture dozens of Russian prisoners within this direction, and video evidence was actually published by the Azov, the 12th National Guard Brigade Azov, in the Toretsk area, proving the capture of dozens of Russian soldiers who were encircled within this area. When you see them moving the prisoners in, we'll have to mute the audio because it sounds like there may be some copyrighted tracks inside of it. But we can see here they're turning around the Russian prisoners, and we can see that there are, quite honestly, dozens of them. This is one of the largest surrenders of Russian soldiers that we've actually seen in about an entire year at this point. The only time that we saw surrenders of this scale was during the Ukrainian Kursk offensive in its opening weeks, where we saw that several hundred Russian soldiers were taken as prisoners and mass surrenders that were occurring because of the rapidity of the Ukrainian advance. Mass surrenders such as these by the Russian side or the Ukrainian side indicate that the other opponent on the battlefield was able to conduct a rapid advance and encircle an enemy force to the point that there is not even the chance of an attempt at a breakout. With the idea, or largely the seed of knowledge planted inside of these soldiers' minds, that they can either fight to the death or surrender and hopefully survive, most soldiers will usually pick the latter instead of the former and try and spare their own lives, much like these Russian soldiers have done. This is once again denoting to us that the Ukrainians were able to advance with such speed that they captured about half a company's worth of Russian soldiers within the southern flank, which is insane. We once again have not seen this really over the course of an entire year, and as far as we've been able to tell, tell, on both sides, this is the largest mass surrender that has happened since the opening of the Kursk offensive around a year ago. But we can see right here that this is actually a platoon leader. That's one of the prisoners. It appears that his name is Alexei, and he was born in 1998 in Irkutsk, a city that has come under Ukrainian attack before. When you see Dmitry Tuzov, born in 1984.
These guys do not look happy at all. They have the look of shame on their face, it looks like.
It really does. It looks like they're not really happy with the whole idea of surrendering, but still, it's actually probably better for them to surrender than to continue to fight, because we all know what happens to the Russians when they continue to fight. Nothing good. But we can see that this guy is the 20th Motor Rifle Regiment of the 2nd Motor Rifle Battalion, 8th Motor Rifle Company, and the 2nd Motor Rifle Platoon. Isn't that a mouthful? Squad leader, Senior Sergeant of Irkutsk City. We can also see here Ilya, who was born in 2005. 9th Brigade, 1st Motor Rifle Battalion, 1st Assault Company. He is a private and holds the position of rifleman. We can also see Alexei Izanov, born in 1976. This guy was actually said to look straight into Chernobyl Reactor number 4 and survive. He is a part of the 9th Brigade, 3rd Assault Battalion. He is a rifleman and a driver from Tomsk City. The entire video goes on and on and on, showing the face and names and identity of each and every single one of these soldiers. There was about 35 to 40 prisoners that were taken in this action today near to the city of Toretsk, which once again is one of the largest mass surrenders that we have seen over the course of this entire war. We have not been able to get exact details or really the shaping up of the southern flank today, but we are understanding that the Ukrainian armed forces were able to punch through the actual urban area a lot faster today than they have been in prior days, meaning that it appears that the Russian front line in this area has temporarily shattered for the day and may be reformed in the next day as Russian defensive forces are scrambling to try and regain their defensive initiative, at least within this critical area of the city. Right now, Russian forces are still holding some positions within the built-up areas of central Toretsk, but considering that Ukrainian forces are now rapidly advancing through the southern suburbs of Toretsk, and also Ukrainian forces are currently putting pressure onto the built-up area from near to this football field, it appears that the Russian Federation's time in the city of Toretsk is most likely going to be coming to an end inevitably at this point, as they really have no other option rather than to retreat or threaten hundreds, if not over 1,000 Russian soldiers that are currently embroiled in the fighting in the city with encirclement and eventual surrender, much like the 30 or so prisoners that we saw taken inside of southern Toretsk today. This is once again a major ordeal, and really showing at this point that the Russian Federation is not in a good position to be able to continue the war. The Russian Federation's armed forces have been strategically exhausted at every single level. Logistically, they do not have the equipment or requisite materials to be able to keep their armed forces operating at a high level of efficiency. Losses are wildly high on any given day, with over 1,000 Russian soldiers being wounded and killed on any given 24-hour period. And not only that, Russian attempts to conduct counteroffensives, even where there may be limited equipment, is also failing in the face of adversity at this point as well. We have been able to see that in the area of Pokrovsk, while the Russian Federation was losing Toretsk, the Russians actually attempted to regain the initiative within the Pokrovsk front and start to push the Ukrainians back, or more so stabilize their front lines. To remind everyone of the situation that's been going on in Pokrovsk right now for weeks, the Ukrainian armed forces have been conducting offensives from all directions against what could be called the finger on the southern end of the city of Pokrovsk, attempting to try and drive the Russians back or cut off large parts of the Russian line from the other Russian main force, and then isolate them and destroy them in detail. We've seen the Ukrainian attacks have been based near to the towns of Lysivka, Shevchenko, Pischany, Kudliny, Udachny, and also Upsnivka, which we do understand that the Russian Federation has largely been pushed back out of Udachny, Kudliny, Shevchenko, Pischany, and Lysivka, meaning that all Ukrainian counteroffensive efforts have been successful, and the Russian Federation is still desperately attempting to try and stop the Ukrainian counteroffensive at just these villages alone, instead of being pushed all the way back to the outskirts of Seladove. The Russians, for this reason, have conducted a counteroffensive today within two different areas near to Lysivka and Shevchenko, and an attempt to try and throw the Ukrainian counteroffensive off balance and start to force Ukrainian forces into a defensive posturing. We were able to see that two major Russian attack columns set forth today onto the battlefield, and the results were actually incredibly shocking, not to sound like the clickbait titles where they're like, the results will shock you, but it actually was wildly shocking. You can see in these tree lines Russians here a myriad of destroyed BMPs, main battle tanks, and other armored personnel carriers that the Russian Federation attempted to use in the offensive today near to Seladove. Well, actually, not Seladove. Correction here. Let me make sure I get that town name correct. It is the town of Shevchenko. Correction there. But we were able to see that the Russians took significant losses near to the town of Shevchenko, and from what we understand, the entire Russian attack column was destroyed or ended up routing from the field. We do not know the condition of the tank crew in the only active main battle tank that was involved in this significant assault. Once again, I want to put this out there. Significant assaults at the beginning of the war by the Russian Federation usually involved several tanks, at least 7 to 10 in an assault column. Nowadays, because the Russians are so short-handed on armor, a significant armored assault may only involve one main battle tank at most involved in any kind of assault that we see these days, meaning that this is about as big as an armored assault gets at this phase of the war. And we can already see that that main battle tank was knocked out. It appears to be some form of a T-72B3 due to the armor tile layout, meaning that it's actually quite rare. Most T-72B3s were destroyed earlier on in the war. We also got to see that several BMP type vehicles may have been destroyed. It's incredibly hard to see them because of the cope cage that covers them, but it appears that their general hull shape does line up to that of a BMP, and also it appears that there was some sort of an opening in the cage where it appears that there may be a turret centrally placed on the armored personnel carrier, once again denoting that they most likely were BMPs, possibly a BMP-1 or a BMP-2 variety APC. And we also were able to see here in this clip, without a shadow of a doubt, that is a BMP-1. It appears to have a very small turret profile, and it also has the large upper glacis that almost looks like a buck tooth that a BMP-1 would have. So it appears that there was a significant amount of armored personnel carriers that were knocked out in that assault, and we also got some additional information about the Russian assaults that were repelled in this area. We can actually see that this assault near to the area of Lysivka was a little bit more significant, and actually had 2 main battle tanks as a part of its force. And this main battle tank in the front appears to actually be a T-90M Pravory, which is one of the more modern Russian main battle tanks, and the Russians have been attempting to produce these in larger numbers. And when we mean larger numbers, we mean that they're only able to produce about 8 or 6 of these a month, so it's not an incredibly large number at all. But we have seen that they've attempted to produce these in larger numbers. It appears that it was outfitted with a cope cage, and behind it is an undisclosed main battle tank. Unfortunately, I cannot identify that one due to the shed that they built over it, but the construction of the shed also denotes that this main battle tank behind the T-90M does not have an operable turret, as the Russians only create sheds out of their main battle tanks if they do not have operational turret systems and gun mechanisms, meaning that this main battle tank is practically filling the role of an armored personnel carrier at this point, because the gun and turret are completely ineffective or useless. So for this reason, this is almost an armored personnel carrier following behind a T-90M, meaning that in this assault, even at Lysivka, there was only one operational main battle tank involved in the assault. We then saw later on that the T-90M appears to have been destroyed. That may be a bit of a correction that we have to give here to the clip that we got out of Shevchenko. This actually appears to be the T-90M from the assault column that we just saw a picture of, and then once again we were able to see the destroyed BMPs from the area around Shevchenko. Nevertheless, the losses have been wildly significant near to the city of Pokrovsk, and not only that, we've also been able to see that in the city of Pokrovsk, this is more so a miracle than anything. One Russian Grad rocket, which is a 122mm unguided rocket fired from a BM-21 Grad, apparently was a dud and did not detonate. You can actually see it down there along the floor. And it appears to me, at least at this point, with a Russian dud in Pokrovsk, these actually happen a lot. There's not really a lot to extrapolate out of that. But the failed attacks near to Lysivka and Shevchenko, it is incredibly obvious at this point that the Russian Federation does not possess the ability to conduct a successful counteroffensive or successful offensives using offensive weaponry and vehicles, such as armored personnel carriers and main battle tanks, due to a significant lack of them, and also a complete lack of communications and training that the Russian forces have been provided. We can see the Ukrainians here just chilling inside the house as this Ukrainian soldier continues to document the damage caused by the Grad rocket, which happened to not explode, crazily enough.
They're very fascinated by the dud there. They keep showing it over and over, like, can you believe this, Bliad? Look, it's just a dud, complete dud.
Hey, this thing kind of looks like something else. Aw, man. Yeah, that's it right there. It's that. Like, it's that guy.
Oh man, yuck.
We see here them showing the hole through the roof again, and then the video clip ends, but still a very nice thing to see, and good to know that the Ukrainian armed forces were able to hold the Russians off south of Pokrovsk, and also got lucky with a little bit of a dud today as well, down in the area of the city of Pokrovsk's eastern end, at least from what we're assuming. Nevertheless, the Russian Federation is doing poorly on the front lines. We will save the rest of the battlefield analysis for later around the area of Chasiv Yar, the Severonsky Forest, and also just the northern front near to Kavkaszkaya, because there is still a lot to talk about there, as well as Belgrade, Kursk, and the location unknowns, and also the strikes that happen in Crimea, and also the pipeline. But I wanted to move y'all on into something that is a little bit interesting to me, something that is wildly interesting, as a matter of fact. Many people will remember that last night we did cover as a brief footnote, because we usually do not cover major Russian attacks on the Ukrainian cities, that the city of Dnipro came under a major attack. It was actually such a significant attack in the amount of damage that was caused that we actually did speak about it for a brief moment here on the channel. This attack was heavily devastating, and from what we understand, there was a decent amount of civilian casualties, including a small number of fatalities, but most importantly, something a little bit magic happened last night, at least as far as the Ukrainians would be concerned. The Russians hit an electrical substation with one of the drones. That is a blatant violation of the energy ceasefire that has been created at this point in between Ukraine and the Russian Federation. As far as the United States and Ukraine are concerned, that ceasefire has been put into effect as of the 26th of March and will be in effect for the next 30 days beyond that point. And that means that while the Russian Federation has openly stated that they're not going to be respecting the ceasefire that they agreed to, the Russian Federation, according to the Ukrainian and American side, violated the ceasefire last night by hitting that electrical substation. According to the terms inside of the ceasefire, critical energy infrastructure includes largely any significant built-up structure that has to do with electrical conductivity or electrical production. This means that power plants, substations, and high-voltage lines are off of the menu for both the Ukrainians and the Russians to be able to attack, because it is directly involved in the Ukrainian and Russian power grid systems. The fact that the Russians hit an electrical substation in the city of Dnipro last night is a clear and effective violation of the ceasefire that was imposed by both sides in Riyadh just several days ago. We were able to hear that Zelensky did state that the Russians have violated the ceasefire and that they will be providing the U.S. government here soon with evidence of Russia violating the ceasefire, and expects a response from Washington as promised. Really quickly, to also clarify this was something that was not really covered here, or anywhere for that matter, about the ceasefire agreement that was created in Riyadh, because the fact that the Russians already reneged from it as soon as they left was really the bigger thing. But the United States of America did state that if the Russians violated the ceasefire agreement, they would start to support Ukraine like no other. And as of today, they've officially broken the second ceasefire agreement, not in words, but in actual action. So this means that the ceasefire, according to the United States and Ukraine, not really even mattering what the Russians are saying about it, has been broken. If Ukraine presents the United States with the clear, and obvious evidence that the Russians did hit an electrical substation last night, the United States has two options. We can either go and actually admit that the energy substation was hit, and hit quite tremendously, or we can try and ignore it and brush it under the rug and say that it wasn't actually a hit on a substation, which will start to heavily degrade the trust that, once again, anyone in the world has for the United States and its foreign policy initiatives, as it clearly would be showing that we have some sort of deference or bias to the Russian Federation if we were to take the option in the latter. So nevertheless, it does appear that many people have been saying that the Russian Federation has been wildly dishonest. Now, I'm seeing that a lot in the chat right now. But another thing that seems to be wildly dishonest as well is that Zelensky is clearly stating that Putin is buying time. According to Zelensky, Russia is preparing for a new offensive on Sumy and Kharkiv this spring. And in an interview with Le Figaro, a newspaper, I believe, inside of France, he said that amid calls for a ceasefire, Putin is trying to buy time while preparing to strike northern Ukraine again. This is once again fairly obvious to anyone with eyes that the Russian Federation is attempting a campaign of deception by only entertaining diplomatic talks but not treating them with any seriousness or severity to what the actual talks are about. And it's quite obvious at this point that with the Russians violating the ceasefire agreement today quite openly, and also the fact that the state of Ukraine is now saying that it appears the Russian forces are building up along the border for an offensive into Sumy or Kharkiv again, it is wildly obvious at this point, without a shadow of a doubt that the Russian Federation is stalling at this point. Zelensky did state that Russia is preparing a new offensive in weeks and is using the peace talks to only buy time until then. And a lot of people have been putting in their thoughts on that and whether that actually is true or not, whether Putin really is stalling or whether Putin will stall indefinitely even after the offensive may begin. And a lot of people have been talking about this, and it appears that the large majority of people are believing that Putin will stall until then, and then he's going to completely cast aside any idea or hope, at least, that there would be an attempt at a ceasefire. Others are saying that Putin will stall indefinitely even after the offensive begins, and just explain away that the offensive was pre-planned and, they had to keep going along with it because who's going to break his schedule? Others are saying that there's a 50-50 chance that it could be either, and some are unsure and undecided. But Matthew, what are people thinking about this, and what are you thinking about it as well?
All right. So 73% of the audience said yes, Putin will stall until the offensive is in action. And then 17% said no, Putin will stall indefinitely. And 6% said there's a 50-50 chance of either option. And basically, the big question is, I think if Putin could, he would stall indefinitely. That's something he would go for because, of course, as long as he can keep these so-called peace talks in the works, that allows Putin to basically buy more time before the U.S. slams really, really rough sanctions on the Russian country and also starts arming Ukraine once again to the teeth, even more than we're currently doing right now. So if he could stall for an indefinite period of time, he would definitely go for it. But the catch is, the real question is the U.S. going to cut Putin loose and cut Russia loose and go full-on enemy mode with them if he does launch this offensive? And honestly, I think it's a 50-50 chance. I'm actually with the 6% on that. Of course, it looks like the U.S. is trying their best to keep this channel open, even if it does look like it's very unlikely to actually produce real results. They're trying to keep these talks going, which, of course, to me, seems a bit futile. I think at this point, with Putin basically rejecting 2 different ceasefires, that it's pretty much futile at this point. I think everybody knows that, but the question is it going to keep going anyway? And it really shouldn't, but there's a 50-50 in my opinion. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would say, in my opinion, I'm with the 73% that Putin will stall until the offensives can begin here in the spring, because what Putin is largely trying to do at this point is play the current U.S. administration for schmucks and largely make them pause their support to Ukraine. There is support still flowing in, mind you, I do want to say that. But once again, that is already the pre-drawn support that has been approved by the Congress. There is no support that's currently being approved additionally on top of that by the Congress right now because the peace talks are coming on along and we're not entirely sure where they're going to be going. So right now, in effect, Putin is making sure to pretty much freeze up the U.S. government and being able to confirm more Ukraine military aid for the future. We're just sending what we've already approved, but we're not approving any new support into the future. So what the Russians are going to do is they're going to keep stalling that to make sure to screw up Ukraine supply-wise until the offensive begins. Once the offensive begins, there really is going to be no attempt at stalling, because if you're creating new offensives into Ukrainian territory, it's obviously showing that you don't really have any attempt or hope at peace at that point, and you were looking to stall the entire time. And we'll hopefully see that the United States actually does start to support Ukraine fully and treat Russia as an adversary, much like the Russians want to be treated. The problem is that the U.S. government currently seems to be desperate to try and keep the line open with the Russian Federation, even when it's clear that it's not going to work or succeed by any measure. It should be clear today, yesterday, and weeks ago that it would not succeed. But nevertheless, they want to keep it open. So even if the Russians begin new offensives or a new offensive in Sumy or Kharkiv, the U.S. government may decide to try and overlook it and just continue to press forward with peace talks that are quite truly pointless, and they're not going to be getting anywhere just for the sake of it. Beyond that, however, it is a very precarious position, at least for the state of Ukraine, and once again, I cannot make enough speeches or soapbox talks about this, or soapbox speeches, that the Russian Federation is an enemy of the United States. The United States didn't pick our enemies. Our enemies picked us to be their enemy. These countries have a bone to pick with the United States of America, like Russia, like China, like North Korea, like the Islamic Republic of Iran, like any other country that is an enemy of the United States. They have a bone to pick with us. It's not that we don't like them. They don't like us, so it's kind of not really by our choice that we have to treat them as an enemy. When in the Iranian Assembly, the Iranian National Assembly, they chant death to America and death to Israel, We are not over there and making them do that. They are doing that because they want to hate us. When Sergei Lavrov comes out and says that Europe is a bunch of weak bitches and so is America and we're going to treat them like that, he isn't doing that because we requested that he do that so that we could make them into our enemy. They are clearly wanting to be our enemy. They do not like us on a national level. The same thing with the People's Republic of China. The People's Republic of China views the United States as a threat to their interests around the world. They view us as an enemy to their expansionist ambitions. That is incredibly clear and obvious if you listen to any plenum of any People's Congress at any point of any year. They are saying the very same thing about the United States over and over and over. If you go back to the very beginning of the history with the Russian Federation in 1991, we were trying to be as friendly and amicable as we could be. We opened up trade with the Russian Federation in every single way. We had trade open with the Russians to such an extent that they could import firearms to the United States of America until that was banned in 2014 because of the Russian annexation of Crimea. That's how open trade is. And I gotta key y'all in on this. American trade is full open. The floodgates are open if you're able to import firearms from another foreign country. Like, the economic trade floodgates are wide open at that point. That's just the basic answer to that. So the fact that you could have a Russian gun imported to the United States until 2014 meant we were going above and beyond to create some sort of economic ties with the Russian Federation the entire time. And you know what the Russian Federation did in exchange with all of this friendliness? Putin made it clear he's not going to let Georgia into NATO. He invaded Georgia in 2008 and 2009. When Ukraine wanted into NATO and the EU, instead of saying, oh, well, we're having friendly trade relations with the United States right now, and that would be totally fine, he said, no, you're not getting into NATO because I view NATO and the United States as a threat to Russia, although we're openly trading with them and we're getting massive benefits from this trade financially for the Russian Federation. I still view them as an enemy, although they're trying to treat us like a friend. And then that's why they annexed Crimea and started the separatist movement in the Donbass. That was the very same mindset they had in 2022 when they invaded Ukraine this time and started the war that we're in right now. That was the very same mindset that Russia had. There was no point from 1991 to now where we actually went out of our way to treat Russia like they are an enemy. The Russian Federation has made it clear that they view us as an enemy, and we have to deal with them on that level. If they want to be an enemy, we'll treat them like an enemy. And I think that the United States of America has a very good way of treating enemies like enemies. We usually turn them into dust. So I would say that is what we should approach the situation as. Talks need to end. Talks are asinine at this point. The talks need to be closed. We need to make it very clear. We are going to kick Putin's teeth in. We are going to kick the Russian army's teeth in. And by the time this is all over, Russia won't have an economic or military leg to stand on unless if they want to exit the war on more amicable and more peaceful terms than what they're doing right now. Because if they think they're going to keep sending Sergei Lavrov out to keep bumping his gums about how weak Europe and America is, while at the same time they're trying to dupe our diplomatic delegations in Riyadh under Witkoff, they should have another thing coming at this point, and I'd hope that that would be the case without a shadow of a doubt. And a lot of people have been talking about what is going to be coming after this, as Zelensky has said today that he'll be providing the United States with undeniable evidence of Russia breaking the ceasefire by hitting the electrical substation in Dnipro last night, and he is expecting that the United States will respond. And a lot of people have been putting in their thoughts on this one. Loads of people have many different opinions on this one. It's split in almost two directions. Some people are saying that the U.S. will send pre-approved weapons, meaning the weapons that have already been approved for drawdown by the Congress in the past. Some others are saying that there will be no response from the United States. The United States is simply going to ignore it. A very small group of people are saying that the U.S. will send new, bigger weapons, and others are unsure and undecided. But Matthew, what are people thinking about this, and what are you thinking about it as well?
All right. So it looks like 38% said the U.S. will send pre-approved weapons in response to Russia breaking this brand new ceasefire agreement, which we're really not even sure actually went into effect or not, while 42% said no response will occur from the United States, and 12% said that the USA will send new, bigger, and better weapons. And honestly, on this one, I think we're going to see the U.S. continue to send pre-approved weapons, even if Zelensky gives concrete evidence of the ceasefire being broken, which that's not very hard to do because the evidence is right in front of our face. Then I would say say they're probably going to keep getting what they've been getting the entire time, because there are pretty much daily flights going into Poland, by the way, from the U.S., delivering military equipment to Ukraine as of today. Also, they're still getting F-16s from other countries, which the USA could try to block those sales or those transfers if they wanted to, and there's been no blocking of that. And also, we have sent upgraded GLSDB weapons as well to Ukraine. So I think we'll keep doing that, but to send bigger weapons, I'm a little bit iffy on that one. And actually, I would say there probably won't be a public acknowledgement of the ceasefire being broken, but the flow of weapons will continue going there. So I'm actually with the 37% and also kind of with the 42% as well. But Enforcer, what say you?
It's a tough one, honestly. I would almost be in the unsure and undecided because I can really see it going those two ways. I'll be honest, the U.S. sending new, larger weapons of larger varieties, I would have to say it is highly unlikely. I'd have to say that the poll really reflects that as well. It probably would not happen because it seems as though the current administration is, I'll be honest with y'all, the current administration is weaker than the last administration on actually driving this thing home and actually seeing that Western American interests are looked after in this region of the world. The last administration only half-heartedly supported Ukraine and supported them with arms and equipment, but it was at a trickle of a pace. And then the current administration acts like the Russian Federation can curb stomp us any week, which anyone would know that that's not true because the Ukrainians, which militarily were the equivalent of, say, a private security force, have been taking on the Russians for about 3 years. So if they can do it, we could easily do it without even breaking a sweat. So the fact that we keep on treating them like that is showing me that there probably would be no chance of sending Ukraine bigger and larger weapons in the future because of those reasons. However, I'd have to say it's a pretty tough split between the other two. The U.S. will continue to send pre-approved weapons for now, but I also believe that there will be no response from the United States due to the hit on the substation. I have a feeling that there's going to be some statements made like this here over just the next day or two, if there's even a response at all. The Russians didn't mean to hit it. The Russians told us they didn't mean to hit it, so it doesn't count. Or they're also going to say something like, well, maybe the Ukrainians did this themselves to try and make it look like the Russians broke the ceasefire, so we're not counting this one. It's going to be something like that or the other, because I have a feeling that the United States of America, or at least the government of the United States of America, or specifically the office of the president, is not looking at all to actually support Ukraine and is looking to really just try and force an end to the war, even if we have to go to the point of appeasement at this point to do that. And so we will just completely overlook this for the large part while continuing to send the pre-approved weapons until that support runs out. And then there probably won't be any support beyond that point for the state of Ukraine because we'll still be desperately trying to push a peace that is unachievable at this point. So that would be...
But really at the same time, though, while that may be true, the good buddy Putin right now, he's going to almost make that impossible before it's over with. Because remember, while this quote unquote peace talks are very painful for people, they can see very clearly through it, and they say, wait a minute, Putin's using this to stall very clearly. It's also very painful for Putin to go through this as well, because he's playing a very, very tricky game right now, trying to keep the United States on the fence and not fully supporting Ukraine, but at the same time, we're restraining Russia just enough to make it look like they're doing some somewhat good faith effort to back off. So it's painful to him because he wants to go in even harder, I think, and start launching even worse attacks on civilians and things like that. But he doesn't go all the way, in my opinion, even though he's still doing it to an extent. He's not going all the way to keep the U.S. Officials on his side to an extent. So I think over time, Putin's going to get tired of it playing these games himself, and he's just going to go all in and say, screw it. I don't care what the U.S. thinks about it. I'm just going to keep doing it, and they can just piss off at this point. And that will probably force the U.S. to actually publicly take a stance on that issue at some point. Not right now, but maybe later on down the road, at least I think.
I would have to agree. I think that probably would be the case. And another thing that I have to say, here's something I have to say, folks. I gotta be honest with y'all on this one. Both administrations, the current one and the last one, as far as the situation in Eastern Europe is concerned, have operated from an absolute position of weakness. I would have to say that that's without a shadow of a doubt. The prior administration was almost, it was almost like the best way I could describe the last administration, it's like one of those dead frogs that you get in the science lab in high school, and you get the electrodes and you zap it, and then like its leg twitches. That was almost what the last administration acted as far as Eastern Europe was concerned. They did practically nothing beyond minimal reactionary responses to what the Russians were doing, and it hardly was even enough to match the Russians at any given point, and it almost seemed like they didn't even want to really be involved in Europe or do anything to support our largest trade partner and the largest economic entity in the Western sphere outside the United States. Then move on to the current administration, which it says that the last administration was weak for all of fairly decent reasons, and then they come in and then they are as weak, I would actually say weaker than the last administration, in terms of supporting American and Western interests. They go out into Eastern Europe, and then you know what they do? They practically roughshod the Ukrainians into offering a unconditional ceasefire to the Russians, meaning that the Russians don't have to make any preconditions. They don't have to meet any. They just have to accept it, and the war would end right there for the large part. The Russians don't accept it, which already shows that they're operating on bad faith. And then you know what else happens? They sit there and call, the president calls up Putin, sits there and talks to him. Putin says, "You have my word, we're not going to attack energy infrastructure. We've already shot all the drones down that are on the way." And the very drones that Putin said they had already shot down went and hit the power plant outside of Slavyansk and blew it up and knocked out the power grid for the entire city, clearly showing that he lied and broke the supposed ceasefire that they had already laid out right there. Then they went to Riyadh this time and then talked about another ceasefire. They agreed to something, the Russians go back, and then they openly say that they're not even going to adhere to the ceasefire they just agreed to. And then you know what we do as a response to that? We just ignore it. In the United States, we ignore it. We are continuing to act like the Ukrainians might not be the ones who really want to end the war, when the Russians are clearly playing us for fools, playing us like a fiddle, and treating us like idiots. And at this point, I'd have to say that they are treating us like idiots because we're acting like idiots. I've never seen two administrations that have been this weak and inept when it comes to Europe at all. There's never been one. There's never been a single one. Like, when you think of any Cold War leader, and I'll make this clear to make this as non-political as possible. When you think of any Democrat or Republican president of the Cold War, you never think of weakness. Never. None of them were weak. Any single one of them would have killed 5 million Russian soldiers, 5 million Soviet soldiers, and every other active fighting soldier in the Warsaw Pact before they would have given up an inch of ground in Europe. That was wildly clear. Look at Kennedy. Look at Nixon. Look at Lyndon B. Johnson. Look at Ronald Reagan. Look at all of them. As far as their foreign policy in Europe, they would rather go to nuclear war than give up an inch in Europe or treat Europe like it didn't count. That was something that was wildly clear the entire time, no matter if it was a Republican or a Democrat. Now you get into the modern day, and both the Republicans and the Democrats put forward presidents in the prior administration and this one that are so weak and ineffective that it's pretty much forcing the Europeans to have to stand on this thing on their own. That is weakness. If I was the president of the United States, I would take the approach to the Russians that every president gone before took against the Soviet Union. They are an enemy of the United States. They are an enemy of the Western world. They are actively attempting to destroy our interests inside of Europe, economically and militarily. And for this reason, they are the paramount threat at this moment for security in Europe. I would say that all diplomatic talks should be ceased at this point. As a matter of fact, we should reverse the talks and say that the Russian Federation is actually going to have to give up territory before we even agree to any kind of a limited ceasefire of any sort. They will have to give up the Kherson Oblast in full before we even go into a ceasefire. We will provide Ukraine with anything that they need. We will give them Tomahawks. We will give them more F-16s. We will give them enough AGM-88 harms that a single Russian radar won't be running in Ukraine by the end of this next month. We would sit there and drive the Russians into absolute submission. Most Russians are going to be choking to death on the fumes of those oil refineries as they're burning over the horizon because the Ukrainian drones just keep slamming them and the Russians can't do anything about it. And we will drive them to their knees. And when they're at their knees and they're at the point that they're their most desperate, we will come in again and we will say, you can either accept a ceasefire, or we're going to end up making sure that Russia only exists in the pages of history. So what will it be? Will you either accept this limited ceasefire and get into peace negotiations on reasonable terms, or will you not? And that would be the ultimatum that we would give them, and we wouldn't treat them like they're some sort of a magical pariah which we cannot touch or deal with because we have this mythical conception that they're some sort of a master group of people like the Aryans of Nazi Germany that are just going to defeat everyone in a conventional war when they can't even defeat a country whose GDP is worth one Elon Musk. So that's what I would say.
To be fair, I will say this: I'm not happy with the diplomatic statements being made. Obviously, I think we're treating Russia way too kindly when it comes to what they're doing. And first of all, we got to operate with the basis that Russia is the wrongdoer. They're the invader of Ukraine. We got to get that through everybody's head first before we go any further. But at the same time, though, in reality, when it comes to real actions, nothing's actually really changed because the weapons and aid is still flowing to Ukraine the way it was during the last administration. So in reality, not much has changed. The only thing that has changed is publicly the words coming out of the mouths of officials is way softer on Russia than it was during the last administration. So hopefully over time, the rhetoric starts changing. But luckily, it hasn't resulted in any real change on the ground for Ukraine because Ukraine still needs the aid. And even though Zelensky's having to jump through some more hoops than he had to before, which I feel bad for him for having to do that because, of course, he's at war and he should be just dealing with the war and not all this diplomatic talk, which is kind of a waste of time right now. If Russia decides to negotiate fairly one day, then they can talk to them. Great. But right now, there's no evidence that they're talking or negotiating fairly whatsoever. Macron's saying that. Starmer in Britain saying that. Literally everybody's saying that, except for the United States, which is kind of weird. But maybe over time things will change. But I think for now it will remain status quo with weapons into the indefinite future, and that's what's most important.
But the thing is that I see where you're coming from, and I would say that as far as the actual ground situation, not a lot's changed so far. But there are some big things that are changing. The U.S. is losing faith and credit right now with every single time the Russians play us as a fool and agree to something and then immediately don't follow through with it, and then we just act like it didn't happen. Like on the two ceasefire agreements, both of them have now been broken, and so far we ignored the first one, and we don't even know what the response is going to be the second time around. We are losing a lot of faith and credit right now, not only with the Ukrainians, that we're actually going to enforce our side of the deal as far as they are concerned. We're losing a lot of faith and credit with all of Europe because we continue to show them that if the same thing started to happen in NATO, who's to say that the United States would not respond to an Article 5 provocation if it came around to that? We might just try and ignore it, like the Romanians largely understood that we would under the prior administration. Another thing to point out is that right now there are no additional congressional drawdowns that are being made in the Congress because right now, just to, lay it out a little bit more clearly, the President of the United States has something against Zelensky. Like, he doesn't have something against Ukraine, he has something against Zelensky, so he's taking out his problems with Zelensky on the entire state of Ukraine. And because of that, no one in the current president's party in the Congress wants to go and really be adamant in supporting Ukraine because they're scared that he is going to use the following that he has that's pretty much usurped the following that the party had to pretty much oust those people from their seats in Congress. So they're not doing anything to further any congressional drawdowns like it used to be done unanimously in both parties for the large part. And we're seeing that there, at least at this point, while support's still flowing, once this support reaches its full drawdown capacity, it ends. There's no additional support beyond this point, and it doesn't appear that there will be any, at least political majority in the Congress to be able to achieve that again. And that's
I think that there will be no worry on that front. Once again, I'm not getting political here, but I think there will be a brand new appetite for Ukraine aid in probably about a year or two. I have a feeling that's probably coming up. So when it comes to that, I think the current allocation for Ukraine that's already been passed through prior congressional bills, that will take care of Ukraine well into the year or two into the future, that they basically have to wait until there's a brand new quote unquote appetite to support Ukrainian Congress once again. I think it's coming.
Hopefully it will, but I'll be honest with you, Matthew, while I have always been a believer that we would just get back to supporting Ukraine, at this point my belief in that is starting to waver a good bit because it seems as though the U.S. is being more weak-spined now than it ever has been in Eastern Europe. In the Middle East, we are for some reason, in the Middle East, the president who said that he loved putting flowers at the end of rifle barrels is wanting to bomb and obliterate everyone in the region that goes against the United States. A little bit odd how we don't like war and we don't like dying until it's the Middle East, but then when it comes to Eastern Europe, we will be practically the Neville Chamberlain of the modern day, and let the Russians do whatever and violate any ceasefire agreement, and we'll just act like it didn't even happen. But with that, I hope that does address that somewhat well, at least in my opinion. And once again, it's my opinion, but in my approach to things, I deal with it a lot differently. Our interests are our interests. I would fight and die for them because that's what keeps America America. The thing is that the past two administrations haven't done that, in my opinion. They've been very weak-willed, and they're practically living in the golden age of this modern Roman Empire or this modern Roman Republic. So they feel like they don't really have to do anything, and it just runs on autopilot, and we don't have to defend their interests, as we slowly see that our enemies are chipping away at it little by little until the whole thing's going to come caving down on us before long in a couple of decades. But anyways, with that, it is time for us to get on into some more news, and for a little bit of comical brevity, considering that we've covered such pressing topics, at least at this point diplomatically, I do want to point out that there was an interesting sighting in one of the riots inside of Istanbul. We actually got to see a full living Pikachu involved in the riots, and there it is. It's a Pikachu.
Oh, man. Did they hit him with the skunk?
Man, I think he already has the skunk.
Oh, well, I mean, who the hell is getting out here in the Pikachu outfit? I mean, that's a little bit crazy.
Honestly, man. And they are booking it in that thing. They're like keeping up with everyone else. That's
Man,
honestly.
they are running with a little bit of, I guess, motivation behind it. They don't want to get maced or something or beat.
I've never seen anything like that in a protest or a riot in Turkey. Actually, funnily enough, this actually says it was in Antalya, which is the capital of Turkey. So this little Pikachu guy. Wait a minute, hang on. That's not. Hold up. Where is Antalya? Because that's not Ankara. Sorry, y'all. I just actually messed it up right there. It was somewhere around Istanbul, I believe, because that's what the actual caption said, and I just assumed so. Because I know the Anatolian Peninsula, which is where Turkey is, and I know Istanbul and Ankara, and also Batman, but I really don't know a lot of other places in Turkey, to be entirely honest. I haven't really been an expert in Turkish geography, so I'll have to say I don't actually know where that exact town is. Oh, actually, correction. It's right there. I just saw it. I'm blind. But anyways, with that,
I think Pikachu is going to bring some unwanted attention to himself. I think the police will probably see him and chase after him specifically just for the Pikachu outfit.
dude, they're going to sit there and say, there's a rat in the crowd, and they're going to look right at that thing. It's like, man, I guess technically it might be right. But moving on from that now to Turkey, we also were able to hear of something else that was a little bit interesting today, just as a side note, just to share this with all of y'all, because I once again want to show y'all, because while I just got done with a little speech there about how we should treat Russia as an enemy, I don't really think people understand how much of an enemy they are. Y'all want to see something interesting? We actually got to see the USS Carl Vinson, that is currently underway right now in the Sea of Japan, heading towards the Middle East, was harassed today by a Russian maritime patrol aircraft. It was specifically that of an IL-38N, being escorted by a US F-35 and an F-18. But if you were wondering, where are we right now? Well, we are on the side of the USS Carl Vinson. And let me go pull that up for y'all to get y'all exactly where this was. So, like someone made a little AI picture of the Carl Vinson. Pretty crappy, if you ask me. But also, let me see if I can get a good side view. So, we are on this side of the aircraft carrier. Let's see, I think this will be the starboard side of the aircraft carrier, if I'm correct. And there's somewhere near to the stern area of the starboard side. That's where they are. You can actually see the tail section of an FA-18 Super Hornet leaning, well, really jutting out over the side of the flight deck. That is an IL-38N, which is a Russian maritime patrol aircraft. These are used in naval detection and anti-submarine warfare abilities, and sometimes anti-ship abilities. Some of these aircraft, like the IL-38, can carry a limited variety of anti-ship missiles on board. And this aircraft flew all the way out from Vladivostok, all the way out to the Carl Vinson, all the way through the aircraft carrier's air defense perimeter, past the destroyers and cruisers that are protecting the aircraft carrier pretty much in a convoy, and then flew right past the aircraft carrier just several hundred yards away.
That's pretty damn close.
Now, I just got to ask y'all, how hostile is that? I mean, like, they didn't fire at the aircraft carrier, but you're making a pretty hostile message when you violate an aircraft carrier's air defense zone and fly right past the aircraft carrier with a maritime patrol aircraft. That is a pretty outrageous spit in the face as far as a diplomatic provocation goes. It happens a lot. Like, it actually has happened a lot over the past 10 to 15 years. I remember a lot of them. But it is still wild to see that in the middle of the United States insisting that the Russians respect the United States, they are going to disrespect our aircraft carriers that are currently underway and try and fly naval maritime patrol aircraft as close as they possibly can to the ship. That's absolutely outrageous. Moving on from that, though, and into some other news that we were also able to hear, we were able to hear that North Korea was really pulling big money moves in East Asia today, because they actually provided another 3,000 North Korean soldiers in January and February in support of the Russian war in Ukraine. That's according to the South Korean military. Now, isn't that crazy? The North Koreans gave enough cannon fodder to the Russians to last them another 3 days. That's insane. Like, really, that's war-changing right there, Matthew. I think with those kinds of numbers, they might be winning the war.
Honestly, man, I guess they're gonna win on the losses chart, I think.
Man, they're just like, we need more numbers. Like, it's like the number, like ticking machine just keeps climbing up. And also, that's a fairly small amount compared to their original amount of around 12,000. They only sent an extra 3,000. They didn't even replace the losses that they took. They took about 9,000 wounded and killed. And so in exchange, they only send 3,000 extra, meaning that their force is now fully reinforced, only half the size of the original force that was sent in. So it looks as though the North Koreans really aren't that adamant to keep sending their own people into a meat grinder, and they're only just doing it to keep up with the payments that they have to make to the Russians for the large part. Oh, another thing that's extra, by the way, I forgot to throw this one around, but apparently those B-2 bombers that we said might be for Iran because there's just so many of them, it wouldn't make sense that they were going to bomb Yemen. It actually was stated today that the B-2 bombers are for Iran. A U.S. official told Axios that the deployment of B-2 bombers at Diego Garcia in the Indian Ocean is not disconnected from the president's 2-month deadline for Iran, signaling this as preparation of a military contingency plan should diplomatic efforts fail. So it does appear that the B-2 bombers are actually directed at Iran and not the Houthis. So it appears that our original assessments and analysis of that was correct several days ago. That one you would have to be blind to miss. I mean, 7 B-2 bombers in the middle of the Indian Ocean, like, clearly we're not going to be bombing a whole bunch of folks with AKs. Like, we're largely going to be bombing the Iranian government. So that seemed to be a little bit of an obvious one. But hey, you want to know something else is cool? You don't want to know something else is obvious? The U.S. air campaign that's still going on against the Houthis. U.S. Central Command actually put out some pictures today of the operations on board the carriers that are, well, on board the carrier, the USS Harry S. Truman, that is currently involved in the air operations against the Houthis. Take a look at these pictures. The pics go hard. Feel free to screenshot. They're just amazingly good-looking pictures, and there were loads of them, as a matter of fact. I mean, quite a large number of them. Here's part 2. Take a look at these.
I'll look at that. That's nice.
Man, that's real nice. Very swell, I'd actually say. Very, very swell indeed. We can also see a couple of more FA-18 Super Hornets launching from the deck right here. We can also see this one. This is actually the electronic warfare variant, because you can see the electronic warfare booms on the end of the wing pylons. But we can also see what appears to be ground crew checking the aircraft, inspecting it, and we can also see them doing that right here. And we can also see them getting the aircraft ready for launch. And we can see them sending them back off the deck once more. A very impressive thing to see, and we love to see U.S. air power at work against the enemies of the United States, wherever they may be around the world. We also got to hear that while the Houthis were getting bombed by the United States into the Stone Age, which they already are in right now, that it appears that the Houthis fired a couple of ballistic missiles again at Israel. And the Israel used the Arrow 3 anti-ballistic missile system to be able to shoot down the incoming Yemeni ballistic missiles. We can see that on this clip right here. This footage is believed to be somewhere around the port of Eilat. Man, that's how I sound when I stub my toe right there.
Oh,
Like,
aw, man.
aw, man. But we did hear that all of the incoming missiles were shot down successfully by Israeli air defense, and there was no collateral damage on the ground from falling debris. Moving on from that and into Lebanon, we also got to hear that apparently Kingpin is going to be sending the Lebanese army to go fight Hezbollah. Now, press X to doubt on this one, folks, because I'd have to doubt this one significantly. Lebanese sources tell me that the Lebanese army is preparing to launch an extensive operation to go after Hezbollah's military infrastructure with American support as part of the Lebanese government's plan to disarm non-state actors. This is one of the main issues to be discussed with the U.S. envoy, Morgan Ortagus, who is set to arrive in Lebanon next week. According to the sources, low-profile steps to collect Hezbollah's weapons or encourage it to sell its small arms have already begun. they're doing a gun buyback program in Lebanon, like they're going to actually do that.
Yeah, really.
Whoa. Look at that buyback. Like, those hardly even work in America. Like, it's like you're going up to a bunch of radical extremists and going, hey, we will buy your gun from you for $180, or we might give you a gift card to Applebee's. They're not going to accept that. That's stupid. Anyways, and the extensive operation is likely to take months, if not years, to complete. That sounds like that's not going to work then, because this guy has to work on a quicker timetable with these sorts of people. Lebanese media reported plans for such an operation to disarm Hezbollah. The sources stated that in her first visit to Beirut next week, Ortegas will also discuss the issue of demarcating the border triangle between Israel, Lebanon, and Syria, following the Israeli government's announcement that discussions with Lebanon had begun regarding the issue of demarcating the Israel-Lebanon border. Wow, I guess that will really fix a lot of things, right? Another issue to be discussed with Ortegas is the future of Hezbollah's financial institutions, such as Card al-Hassan. That's like a la mode, to have it a la carte. These talks will determine whether the Lebanese government will provide such institutions licenses to operate as recognized financial institutions in Lebanon, or to ban and outlaw them. Hold up, so wait a minute, we're actually going to give them the option to just legalize Hezbollah financial institutions or ban them. So we're not even giving
That's
them...
what I was thinking. Why is that even a question? It's like they know it's Hezbollah's institution, then why are they like debating that?
Hi, I am Ortegas, Morgan Ortegas here, U.S. envoy. I'd like to talk about possibly legalizing the financial institutions that Hezbollah uses to fund their campaign of terror against Israel and the United States. Would you be interested, Mr. Kingpin, President of Lebanon, on discussing this? Why, yes, of course. Oh, good. Well, let's make sure to legalize their financial institutions, so that way it'll be even harder to stop them from receiving money and weapons to be able to continue to kill American soldiers and Israeli soldiers on the ground. This sounds like a win-win for everyone. Talk about peace at all costs. Great to see here. And I'm saying that very sarcastically. This is absolutely stupid. But once again, it does appear that at least at the moment, they are considering that the Lebanese military might go and fight Hezbollah. Do you know the problem with that, though? The little itty-bitty problem is that in the border skirmishes that happened with Syria just last week, the president of Lebanon ordered the Lebanese military to go to the Syrian border to fight on the side of Hezbollah. So I'm honestly doubting that they would actually fight against Hezbollah, because it seems as though they kind of got a thing of liking Hezbollah a good bit, at least in Lebanon. So, gotta say on that one, that's not making that much sense to me. Anyways, moving on from that and out of the Middle East, I do have to make sure that we talk a little bit more about that whole North Korean troop and movements sorts of deal, because it was interesting here that they sent another 3,000 of them, and North Korea has sent more troops and equipment to Russia over the last month. And is Russia more reliant now on North Korea? Is North Korea producing those kinds of munitions and other sorts of things that the Russian Federation has to have to be able to keep the war going? Is that what's really going on? And it appears that a lot of people are saying, yes, the Russians have to have more North Korean stuff, or more Nork goods. Others are saying that the Russians are simply supplementing itself with some North Korean goods. Everyone knows that they're high quality. And others are saying that it seems like the usual, and some are unsure and undecided. But Matthew, what are people thinking about this, and what are you thinking about it as well?
All right, so we are now going to look here while I try to get rid of one bot real quick, but I'll have to get him in just a minute. It looks like 64% said yes, Russia must have more North Korean stuff, while 16% said no, Russia simply supplements itself, and 14% said it seems kind of like the usual type of weaponry that they've been getting. So I would say that Russia does have to have more North Korean stuff, because once again, they're a little bit behind schedule when it comes to replacing torn up and damaged equipment and also destroyed equipment. So they must have these Kavkaszkaya SPGs that are being sent from North Korea, and they must also have the troops as well, because they need some more guys. And of course, they need those well-trained North Korean soldiers to come in and show them how it's done. And they're so well-trained that they take the losses chart to a whole new level when they show up. And they also have to get withdrawn from the front lines to regroup, because they are so powerful with that juche. But not really. But, I would say I'm with the 64%. I say that Russia is more reliant on North Korea, and they need their help, which is sad, because North Korea is a country that most countries would feel very shameful in asking for help, because it's a very poor country, probably one of the most poor in the world. But Enforcer, what say you?
Man, those North Koreans are poorer than anything I've ever seen before. I was trying to make a joke there, but I couldn't think of one. But beyond that, I'd have to agree with the majority that the Russians have to have more North Korean equipment. Not really ground equipment. We have seen that they've gotten a large amount of Koksan SPGs, but I believe that the more important equipment that the North Koreans are providing the Russians with are munitions as a whole, largely large caliber, high explosive shells for Russian artillery systems. That seems to be the most valuable thing that the North Koreans are providing, and we do understand that the Russians, really even mobilizing their economy to a war industry, are not able to produce a sufficient enough number of shells to be able to use on the front line. The North Koreans, having stockpiles that have been built up over the course of decades, have an inexhaustible supply of high explosive shells to be able to provide to the Russians that are, of course, in the exact same caliber that the Russians would use. For this reason, the North Koreans are an inexpendable part of the Russian supply chain at this point, providing the Russians with high explosive shells that they wouldn't be able to produce otherwise. If the Russians did not get these North Korean shells, it is highly likely that they would go into an ammunition shortage, at least for their artillery, and what that means that they would most likely start to decrease the amount of shells fired per day, and that means that the Ukrainians, largely by the Russians' inability to actually have the volume of shells to fire, would actually reach firepower parity with the Russians within the next several months if the North Koreans were not supplying the Russians. So for that reason, I do believe that the Russians are heavily reliant on this point on the North Koreans to provide them with munitions and military support, because if they didn't, they would not have a firepower superiority that they would be able to exert onto the battlefield like they have been for months at this point. So with that, I hope that addresses that the best I can, and that actually moves us right on back into Europa, because we've got a load of news to talk about here in Europe, but before we get to that, I do understand that we've actually gone quite some time without getting to a question segment. I mean, we've covered the news for a whole hour and 15 minutes, and we haven't had a little intermission or a break once, I say, to even cover a single question. And y'all know what's the craziest thing about tonight? It's actually quite crazy, is that I haven't had a single drop of coffee tonight, and I'm absolutely spry and awake. Very lucky for me. I actually don't know how that's working right now, because before the stream, I was like, I'm not going to drink a coffee tonight. I think I'll be fine. And I actually did turn out to be fine. Maybe the coffees were placebos the entire time. I don't really know. Because I'm just trucking on along tonight, perfectly fine, and don't feel tired at all. Not one bit. But nevertheless, Matthew, let's hear a couple of those questions. What do we got?
All right, so we have some very juicy super chat questions to get to tonight. And our first one is going to go to a longtime channel legend. It is Richard Ager, who puts in a $100 donation.
Dang.
And thank you very much, Richard, for that massive support and by far the largest super chat of the night. We do appreciate that. He said, is it how you say, perhaps the U.S. had to have a red-hot go at peace talks before other options are chosen, and the U.S. faces the possibility of 3 major theaters at once, and which one can best look after itself? Plausible.
Thank you for the massive support, Richard Agur. That is huge support, and I got to thank you massively for helping this channel to keep on running, and also being one of our LSA viewers all the way in Australia. And I also have to say, that's a very good question. As far as the areas that would be able to handle themselves, really the Middle East would be able to handle itself pretty easily. I've continued to say that time and time again, and as far as it goes, the Middle East is, hands down, is the easiest place to deal with. The Iranians are geographically isolated. They don't actually share a land border with any country that would be involved with them in a major conflict or, say, a world war. So they are completely isolated, practically on an island, because Iraq wouldn't join a war, so Iran wouldn't attack them. And Turkey would join a war, but most likely not against Iran. It would be against the Russians, because I don't believe Iran is within the geographical purview of any Article 5 provocations. So for that reason, Iran is largely on its own. There really won't be any enemies nearby for them to directly attack, unless if it was with their air force, rocket, or drone forces, which once again are in fairly limited number and would be easy to deal with. The U.S. security assurance sphere within the area of the Middle East can easily deal with most Iranian air threats on its own, with Saudi Arabia, Jordan, and Israel working together to be able to shoot down any incoming air targets. U.S. involvement is practically unneeded, at least within that area, for those reasons. The Israelis also have an incredibly large military with a sufficient air force to be able to deal with any threats and also conduct offensive actions against the Islamic Republic of Iran if need be on their own, without the U.S. security assurance sphere in the area also helping them. So for that reason, the U.S. doesn't have to be heavily involved in the defense of the Middle East or our interests in the Middle East, because they actually could take care of themselves on their own if all 3 major fronts took off on their own. As far as the other two, which is Europe and Asia, Asia is one that will require a heavy amount of U.S. involvement by the United States Marine Corps and the United States Navy, because most of that war, really any of that war, will be fought at sea. The Chinese are building their navy for that reason, because they know that if they ever want to go to a war in the region, they will be fighting that at sea. None of that war will ever be fought on land. So for that reason, if we're talking about the defense of Taiwan, the U.S. Navy is really the most important branch of the military and is operating pretty much on its own at that point in defense of Taiwan. The U.S. Air Arm, well, the U.S. Naval Air Arm would be there along with the U.S. Navy and could be supported by the U.S. Air Force and some U.S. Marines on land if they found it necessary. But once again, largely on its own and requiring a completely different supply chain and force projection than would be seen in Europe. Europe, on the other hand, is completely different and largely does require a lot of our support. Europe is our largest financial I guess you could say sphere within the West outside the United States itself. And for this reason, it does become the most important. Some people like to think that decision-making on a strategic level involves the humanitarian. The reality is that it's actually a lot more practical. What the actual value that is given by a group, rather than more so just, do we like them or not? So as far as it goes around the world, Europe actually provides the most economic value to the West than any other group, whether it be the Western Pacific or the Middle East. Europe is it. So as far as Europe goes, that would involve a large amount of the U.S. Army as well as the U.S. Air Force to be involved in those operations. So once again, we could largely fight both the war in the Pacific and the war in Europe all at the same time, really, because we wouldn't have to pull on on all branches equally on all fronts. Europe would more so be Army and Air Force heavy, and then the area around Taiwan would be more so Navy and Marines heavy, at least with the kind of fighting. Exactly like it was in World War II, actually. That's exactly how it was in the Second World War. The entirety of the Pacific theater was largely fought primarily by the U.S. Marine Corps and the U.S. Navy. There were some limited Army involvements, but those were heavily curtailed after the first year or so, because it turns out the Army doesn't really know how to conduct an amphibious landing for the most part, at least island hopping. So who would have thunk? It's more so the responsibility of the Marines. So the Marines were the ones who largely took over most island hopping operations from that point, meaning that the Pacific was really a Navy Marine Corps centric sort of a war. The war in Europe, however, is more so of an Air Force Army sort of a war, meaning that you could have both of those, all four of those branches, two of them in Europe, two of them in the Western Pacific, and there really wouldn't be any intersection, meaning the U.S. could power project in both of those conflicts and really not even break a sweat. We would start to break a sweat, however, we had to start divvying up forces to go down in the Middle East when we really don't need them to. You could conduct minor Air Force operations against Iran and probably cripple them and allow the Israelis to finish them out or really wipe out their government at that point and leave them ineffectual, at least for a while, just continuously destroying their leadership. So that would largely be the way that would go, at least in my opinion. So the top priority would be Europe. The second priority would be the Western Pacific. The third priority would be the Middle East, at least with how we would be able to manage them or how much presence is really required by the United States in any one of those given instances. But still, I thank you for the massive support, Richard Agur, and being an old guard and a channel legend, because folks like you have supported this channel and been here for quite some time. And I got to thank you so much for asking a really good question. That was a great question, by the way. And I also got to thank you for the massive support as well, because folks like you make this channel possible and help us to keep this thing running day in and day out. And if it wasn't for folks like you, we simply would not be able to make a show like this possible day in and day out. And of course, a massive thanks to you for that once again. Also, David Tablet said the Army was heavily involved in the retaking of the Philippines. Yeah, caveat there, correction. That is true. For the most part, though, I was more so speaking about most of the war's actions, because from 1942 up until about 1945 even, most operations in the Pacific involved the U.S. Marine Corps. The Philippines, though, is an outlier because there was a decent amount of Army units involved in the recapture of the Philippines. But once again, once the Marines made landfall, most of the fighting in the Philippines was largely considered a land operation, not really an amphibious onshore operation like the Marines were experts at conducting, or island warfare, considering the Philippines is big enough that you can pretty much consider it to be open terrain at that point that the Army would be used to fighting on, say, in Europe. So the Army was heavily involved in the Philippines, but you would rarely ever find them heavily involved most other places beyond the Philippines. There are a couple of outliers, though, but those outliers would be few and far in between before the instance of the Philippines. But anyways, well, also, by the way, there were some U.S. Army forces at Okinawa. Like there was always, like, a little bit of Army forces sprinkled in here and there with the Marines, but really where you would find the most of your fighting forces in the Pacific, they would have been in the Marine Corps. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address it the best I can. Thank you for clarifying that, though. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next super chat goes to none other than Purple Gerbil, who puts in a $35 donation. And thank you very much, Purple Gerbil, Mr. Gerbil, for that $35 support, and we do appreciate it. And of course, Purple Gerbil has been around for a long, long time, and we do appreciate that. And they said, please take a live chat in LSA forever.
And long live the Lee Spring Army, and thank you so much for the support, Purple Gerbil, and helping this channel to keep on running. Because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this thing possible. We wouldn't have been able to make it a reality for 3 years at this point, over 3 years, really. And I got to thank you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this thing possible. And of course, we'll get a live chat in your honor. So what do we got, Matthew? What do we got?
And the live chat question goes to Canada is Sovereign, who says, are the Russians able to produce any effective military formations with their troops and armor?
I would have to say that it really isn't possible at this point. The Russian Federation has been weakened so heavily in their armor sphere that you're looking at the cutting edge of what Russia can provide, or in the large instances, you're looking at the oldest that Russia can provide. So in some units, you may see a T-90M here and there, because the T-90M is being produced in limited numbers these days. But largely, you'll see that most Russian units at this point have gotten down to using T-72As, which was the first production variant of the T-72, T-62s, or T-55s. Those seem to be incredibly common main battle tanks at this point being used by the Russian Federation, and so the Russian Federation, at least in terms of modern quality, isn't really able to roll out those kinds of units anymore. And even still, we're understanding that they're starting to run thin on T-62s and T-55s as well. So generally, as far as their actual main battle tank armor, they're running out. As far as armored personnel carriers, we're already largely assuming that they've mostly run out of those. We don't really see them a lot anywhere. We usually see what you can call bicycle battalions at this point, using electric scooters, or you usually see some sort of a, you can call them a motorized group, using Ladas or any other kind of civilian vehicles to conduct assaults, once again unarmored. So we're understanding that at this point, armored personnel carriers and infantry fighting vehicles are almost non-existent for most of the Russian army that's currently in Ukraine. So as far as them being able to create effective offensive formations, it's highly unlikely, because armor of any variety, armored personnel carriers and main battle tanks, is incredibly important to conducting an offensive. You can have a large amount of artillery firepower and possibly try and suppress your enemy to be able to allow your infantry to close the distance and then engage in actual fighting. But the reality is that if you don't have armor to be able to protect them that little additional amount, counter battery fire could easily occur, and they could start to wipe out your attacking force while they're pushing up onto the suppressed enemy forces. So the reality is that the Russians probably will never be able to conduct an effective, create an effective offensive formation at this point, just due to their lack of armored vehicles across the board. And so with that, I hope that does address it the best I can. Thank you once again, Purple Gerbil, for sponsoring that live chat and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the final question of this segment, and then we're going to be moving on into the rest of the news.
And this one is going to go to Rick Galinchin, who puts in a 30 Canadian donation. And thank you very much, Rick, for that support once again, and being one of our Canadian viewers here on the channel. And Rick said, Slava Ukraine.
And Ram Slava. And thank you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And it's good to know that a lot of folks who still support Ukraine as a part of American and Western interests is still here with us and continuing to help this channel to keep on running. And of course, a big shout out to you being from the great nation of Canada, a really interesting place, and one that I've always been intrigued by, especially the place called Banff, which always looks so nice on the pictures. And one day we'll see it. But beyond that, thank you so much once again for the support. I hope that does address that the best I possibly can, because it is folks like you all the way up there from Canada and around the world who continue to make the Lee Spring Army possible day in and day out. So huge thanks to you once again, and it's time for us to move on into the remainder of the news. Conducting a little bit of a lightning round here, we were able to hear that the United States is reapproaching Ukraine with a brand new mineral deal. The president of the United States is demanding huge reparation payments and laying claim to having Ukraine's oil, gas, and hydrocarbon resources, as well as almost all of its metals and much of its infrastructure, at least according to the deal that was laid out today. Zelensky has made it incredibly clear that he is not going to be traveling to Washington, D.C. to sign that deal. He stated that the deal isn't complete, and there's no final version yet, so he's just not going. He's probably scared because of what happened the last time, to be entirely honest.
Yeah, honestly, he probably is. If I was thinking too, he's learned his lesson from the first time. He's like, I think I'll pass on going, but thank you very much. I'll see you later.
He's like, I'm good. I would pass. Like, honestly, like, call it Krivy because we're going to give it a pass. But we also were able to hear in other news that the Russians are going to be increasing their presence of forces in the Arctic. The president of the Russian Federation, Vladimir Putin, announced that Russia will increase its number of troops in the Arctic and will expand its activities in the Arctic Circle. Once again showing that there is a race to militarize the Arctic by largely all military parties, including the United States of America, the Russian Federation, and the People's Republic of China. We also were able to hear inside of France that France and Britain will represent the Ukrainians into the future, according to Zelensky. Zelensky stated that France and Great Britain will represent Europe at the negotiating table to end the war in Ukraine, once again showing that the British and the French are largely taking the helm at representing European interests at large. Meanwhile, we've also been able to hear in Lithuania, near to the town of Pokrovsk, that recovery operations are still underway. We can actually see a picture from the recovery site near to the M88 recovery vehicle, as rescue operations in LTU Pokrovsk training area is intensively continuing, and the site is being prepared for specialized equipment. They still do not know what happened to the crew. There has been no sign, hair nor hide of the crew, at least according to public statement, but they have found the site of the M88, and that picture is largely near to that area. Meanwhile, inside of Moscow, we also were able to hear that the Russians have sent a warning of a severe degree to Sweden and Finland, as Putin did state that Russia will respond to Finland and Sweden's participation in NATO activities. And best of luck to that, because they are a part of NATO, and they are provided Article 5 protections for that reason. But the Russians, they like to yap, and boy howdy does Putin yap. Putin yaps more than any Russian alcoholic that you find in a commie block, and that says a lot because it's hard to beat those guys. Meanwhile, inside of some more news, we also were able to hear that the Russians are now arresting dissenting statements of arresting Russian military bloggers for creating dissenting statements against the special military operation of any variety. And here's a statement by a Russian speaking about his brother, who was a military blogger who was arrested by the Russian authorities. Here's what I know about my brother, Sergei Omelchenko. Some guys in civilian clothing pulled up to his house in a whip. It was a fresh whip. At 65 Deleglazova Street, supposedly to talk about his Telegram channel. Then, as far as I know, they suddenly pinned him down and forcibly shoved him into a car. They're trying to charge him with disobedience to authorities. We're heading to his house to find witnesses, because people were sitting nearby and saw that my brother didn't resist. In other words, the regime is going all in. Well, I'd have to say, I don't really think it matters if you find witnesses, because in Russia, you're guilty, and then you're proven guilty, and then you're put in prison. So I don't really think that'll matter too much, but it looks like he's going to give it a shot. Meanwhile, we were also able to get some additional news from Kyiv as well, that the air defense report came in, and it looked somewhat all right. Ukraine was attacked by 86 drones and an Iskander overnight. 42 of the drones were shot down. Another 26 missed their targets due to electronic warfare interference, but the Iskander and around 20 or so drones did make it through and did hit their targets, meaning that the interception rate was historically lower than the ones that we've seen prior. Meanwhile, moving on into the Kursk Oblast near to Sudza, we also were able to see the Ukrainians in the 103rd Territorial Defense Force Brigade hitting Russian forces within this direction. While the Ukrainians do not hold a large amount of ground inside the Kursk Oblast any longer, they are continuing to impact Russian forces within the area quite significantly with FPV drone attacks, as well as precision artillery and airstrikes. It appears that the Russian Federation is still taking high losses at this point, even with the Ukrainians only holding a small slither of ground within the area right along the border. We see them here showing one of those Russian vehicles cooking down there, and we also see a Russian driving an ATV and now braking for the bushes. And we see them hitting the ATV and destroying it once and for all. We can also see 4 Russians here in the bushes, and y'all know what they say, 4 Russians in the bush are worth more than 2 in the field, and it appears that that was a true statement. We also got to see them hitting a tractor. The Russians are using those these days. Not for agricultural purposes, mind you. They are not harvesting grain. It appears that they are harvesting pain. We also got to see that the Ukrainians are continuing to hit Russian buhankas as well. Call that thing a clown car because it goes we can also see them hitting more Russian vehicles in the streets. It appears that the buhanka was zipping by as that one was hit, and it floated away.
These streets are dangerous out here. I'll tell you what, they should go and seek shelter immediately.
Man, I'm telling you, man, it seems as though there's an F5 tornado coming through of pain and fury, the likes of which have never been seen before. We see this one flying on into a shed right here.
Oh, look, he's parked in here where he shouldn't be parked. That's no parking, sir. Parking ticket time.
Dude, the Ukrainian said, excuse me, you can't park here, and then blew it up like instantly.
The Russian said, oh, look, it's the Mida man. And it said, bang. It's like, oh, shit.
Well, you see them hitting a grad here. We can also see that basement got blown away by the before and after clips. We see them
Just a
now.
floating bomb looking for trouble.
Those bombs, those bombs. Oh, and they hit a dirt bike. That was a real loss right there. If it was a KTM, then nothing of value was really lost, but we can see them here hitting another Russian vehicle in the trees. It appears to be another buhanka. And another buhanka. Y'all notice how there's not really any armored personnel carriers anymore, it's just all Ladas and buhankas? That's exactly what I was saying a second ago about the Russians creating attack formations. Well, that's the end of that clip, and it looks as though the Russians are running a little thin on everything these days. Meanwhile, down in the area of Belgorod, we were able to see that the Ukrainian forces are continuing to advance within the direction of Demidovka. We were able to see that the Ukrainian armed forces control Popovka, Demidovka, Grafovka, nearly, and also a couple of other areas. It appears that the Ukrainians are intent on staying here at this point, and it appears that the Russians will probably have a little bit of a tougher time getting them out. Meanwhile, we also got to see some Russians getting hit in the Belgorod area by the Requiem group, which is clearing out Russians faster than you can say Spokojnej noci, which means good night in Russian. Well, you see here that the drone is called Russo Riz, and I'd have to say that the Russians have negative Riz. Respectfully.
Oh my God. Are you seeing this chat? Are you seeing this right now?
No.
Bro, like, look in the chat for a second.
Oh my God!
Oh my God.
Oh my God! Honestly,
I'm just saying that's like wild as hell. Like, I'm not gonna lie.
that is. I wouldn't even wish that on my worst enemies, but I don't know if Anthony's going to time that out or not. I have no clue. But honestly,
I don't know how to react to this, to be honest with you.
I don't know how to react to that either. But that's a new one to me. I've never seen anything like that before. But anyways, you see the Ukrainians continue to hit. Oh, look, it's a rare Russian main battle tank. Actually, it's a T-62M. Once again, a T-62. Can we have an LSA in the chat right now? Can we have an LSA in the chat? I'd like to see an LSA in the chat. I think that'd be a beautiful thing to see, a wave of LSAs in our live chat. Go for it, folks. Go for it. You got my letter of approval, a letter of marquee right there. Moving on from that and down into our location unknowns, we were also able to see that the Russians are still using donkey. And we see that donkey there doesn't want to go. But it went anyways. Moving on from that and into the next clip, we also got to see the Ukrainians conducting paradrop training. Look at that paradrop training. They're all getting in Antonov 22, and then they're jumping right out of the back, just like a paratrooper would. Look at them. They're going down to the ground. It looks like they got giant pillowcases above their heads. Those don't look like normal parachutes, to be entirely honest. And also, we can now see them hitting the ground and then trying to recover their chutes. Very nice to see. Very good to know that they're still conducting parachute training. But moving on from that, we also got to see that apparently disabled Russian soldiers are now back on the front lines. I guess you could say this guy's got rims, because it appears that he hopped right out of his whip and right onto the ground. The Russians are sending their soldiers, who are even disabled, like we can see here, back to the front lines for frontline assault service, believe it or not. So if you are paralyzed from the waist down, it does not matter. They will still send you on an assault, just like we see right here. And it appears that they didn't make it out. Moving on from that and into our next clip, we also got to see a Humvee with a very interesting cope cage. And that is one interesting cope right there. And I guess you could say that the Russians can only cope harder because nothing can beat the Chad Ukrainian cope cage as compared to the Russians' weak virgin cope cage. But look at those. Very impressive. Very nice. Moving on from that and into our Russian casualty report, we also were able to see that the numbers were quite high today as well. Oh!
My mic wasn't even picking me up, but we got one Bobcat skid steer today. I'm telling you what, I love to see it. Now we got a 787 here. That's fantastic. But Enforcer, tell us more.
Oh man, and Miss DC, keeper of the records, was telling us some crazy impressive stuff, some really spicy. Miss DC, keeper of the records, stated that 1,670 personnel is tied for the 20th highest, and it's the highest since February 16th of 2025, raising the 7-day average back over to 1,340. Which was a good year. Let's go pull up the year of 1340. Let's go pull it up. What do we have here for the year of 1340? King Edward III of England declared himself the King of France, and the English fleet under his command decisively defeated the French fleet in the Battle of Sluis, securing English dominance of the English Channel. And what do you know, it was a good year for sure. But moving on from that, 169 vehicles is tied for the 7th highest daily loss. Now, let's get into the numbers. 1,670 Russian soldiers were wounded and killed over the past 24 hours, along with 16 armored personnel carriers, 169 supply trucks, 8 main battle tanks, 58 artillery pieces, 108 drones, 2 MLRSs, 1 anti-aircraft warfare system, and 1 Bobcat skid steer. All in all, it was a pretty good day, and it was good to see that the Russians continue to be beaten into the dirt. Moving on from that and into the northern area near to Kavkaszkaya, we also got to see the Zalas getting hit by Ukrainian drones. And we see the drone coming on in, keeping its eye dead on the target. Look at that. Keep it on the target. Goodness gracious, keep it on the target. There they go. They're going right down for that Zala. Holy moly. And we can see them getting hit.
Weird-looking Zala right there, honestly.
Whoa, look at that Zala. But they did get it. Weird or not, that thing got blown up. Very nice to see. Moving on from that and out of that clip and on down into the area of the Severonsky Forest, we also got to see them hitting the Russian forces in this area in the 63rd Brigade. When you see them here with their red lights, they're literally seeing red in the 63rd. I had to say that has to be a good sign of what's about to be coming for the Russians. When you see them getting their Baba Yaga ready to go. Baba Yaga blade! And the silence is deafening. But we can see here that the Baba Yaga is being ready to be sent off. And we see them now dropping the bomblets onto the Russians. We can see them here continuing to drop bomblets onto the Russians in the field. We can see them down there in the rows of corn, it appears. And continuously being hit by more and more bomblets. We see some Russians trying to make a run for it, but the Baba Yaga does not care, and gets one of them dead on the nail. Holy moly!
Oh, damn, they got the blue thing on him this time. Look, oh.
Man, that's some impressive stuff right there. Now you see them trying to hide behind what appears to be the wreck of a BMP over there. And it looks like those guys have been successful for now. And the drone actually moved on to a new group inside the trees. And it looks like one of them got some flight miles right there, or at least parts of them. And call this drone Tiger Woods because it's hitting holes in one and getting teeth knocked out.
Is that you, Tiger?
I don't know what Tiger Woods even sounds like, to be honest with you, man.
They're great.
You know, I should have seen that coming, man, honestly. Like, it just hit me, man. I was like, you know what, that makes sense. Anyways, moving on from that and down the line, we also got to see a Belarusian unit today in the 225th Regiment doing its thing. Look at that. Walking around with a free Belarus flag. Driving a tank, honestly, a little bit wild-like. Spinning donuts. Firing the gun of a BTR. Watching the mud kick up. Riding around more in the middle of the mud. Walking through the forest. Driving Bradleys. We like Bradleys. Showing off SPGs. That actually appears to be a Tulpan. We can also see them here driving more vehicles. Don't know what that looks like in Nikitsia. We can also see them driving modified BMP-1 TSs. A very nice vehicle right there. And you see them giving a little Slovo-Ukraini here. And that's the end of that clip, but still very nice to see and good to know that the Belarusian volunteer unit is still out there and fighting hard. And moving on from that and down into the area of Chasiv Yar, we also got to see a Ukrainian strike, or the aftermath of a strike on a buggy. Take a look at this. It's a Chinese buggy. What are the charges? Enjoying a buggy? A sucking Chinese buggy?
Вот баги.
And the tire's
Спереди
flat.
всё, что лежало, всему.
Man, someone needs to call a mechanic, or more so a bicycle shop with the size of that tire.
Фугасом.
These things are so ugly. Like they're like trying to put a grill of it, like a Humvee or a Jeep or something on the front.
Honestly,
Остатки
man, it
какие-то
is
живые мы
rough.
достали, забрали. Двум колесам спущенные. Но я попробую дотащить. А вот разорвало как мне еду.
We see him here showing the damage inside the vehicle.
Тоже провода порвало. Дочку.
And that was the end of that clip, but it doesn't appear that that little Chinesium buggy survived well. We also get to see the Ukrainians hitting Russians in this direction as well in this clip. We see them here finding the Russians, and soon the day of reckoning will be upon them. In the words of Papa John, "Yeah, I've eaten 40 pizzas in 30 days, and the quality's not getting better. The day of judgment is coming." And we can see that
They don't make that pizza the way they used to make it.
honestly, man, like Papa John's pizza, I honestly haven't tasted that much of a difference, to be entirely honest.
Nah, I haven't tasted much of a difference either. I think it was a placebo for him.
Yeah, I think honestly, man, he was sweating like pizza grease when he did that interview. I think he may have been in a state of delirium at that point.
I think so.
And we
Look
see
at
them.
that. You know, it was a rare sight of a Russian helping another Russian. You'll rarely ever see that.
You don't see that much. That is actually quite rare. But moving on from that clip and a little bit further on down past Toretsk and Pokrovsk, because we already covered that earlier, we did get to see down in Crimea that they were hitting some Russian targets with the Vanos gaming crew, apparently. Well, here they come. They're coming on in. And we can see them here hitting the Russians. Actually, it appears to be a Ural right there. We can now see them hitting another target. It appears to be a tugboat. We can also see them hitting another target here. It appears to be some sort of a radar. We can also see them hitting another target. It also appears to be another radar. We now see them hitting what appears to be an armored personnel carrier. And also a thingamajig. We can now see them flying the drone on in to hit a Pantsir S1. And oh, that Pantsir S1 just slammed a rocket into the ground. Very sad to see. Very sad to see. But very nice to see the outro that they made. That's brand new. I never seen that one before. And moving on from that and into the area of Kavkaszkaya, we got to see the damage report from the facility. This is the pumping facility. Any of the silos marked in red were destroyed. The one marked in yellow was damaged. Anything in blue is undamaged. The roofs on the buildings are already blue, so they don't count. Practically the entire pumping facility is gone. So it appears that the pumping facility has been knocked out of action. What do you know? It's nice to hear, and that means that pipeline most likely will be down until repairs are effected, and we don't believe that repairs are going to be effected within any practical timeline soon. Moving on from that, it is now time for us to get on up to Kyiv to cover the speech from President Volodymyr Zelensky. But we have no speech, at least I do have to make this clear, according to his website. Now, usually on the President of Ukraine's YouTube channel, there is a speech. So we are going to go and find it because we have to have a breather for water and other things. And I'd have to say that it appears that we may have something for all of you. We have something for the lot of you folks. It is a 58-minute long interview. We're not watching all of it. We're just going to put it on and let those subtitles roll, so that way we can go and get some water, maybe a snack or something, and then get ready to keep on going. Do they have a translation in English for this? I see EU, I see Estonian, Esperanto. I don't see English.
They're calling it American now.
They're calling it American. But anyways,
Yeah.
let's see here. Let me get it forward to a nice long piece of monologue. And this appears to be it. So we will go to here and we will get it for all of you. And without further ado, here is what is going to be standing in today for the speech from President Volodymyr Zelensky. And so, well, without further ado, speech!
Speech!
Дякую, будь ласка, Суспільне телебачення України.
Добрий день, Валерія Пашко. Суспільне, пане президенте, якраз про Америку заговорили. З'являлася інформація про те, що готується якраз нова угода щодо корисних копалин між Україною і США. Тож у мене питання, чи можете ви розкрити деталі, чи ми більш задоволені цим проєктом, ніж тим, який був раніше, кілька тижнів тому, і, можливо, ви збираєтеся їхати знову ж таки підписувати в Вашингтон знову цю угоду? Дякую дуже.
Поки що в Вашингтон не збираюсь. А їхати. Тому що немає такого питання на порядку денному. А друге, ми маємо дуже багато вже цих договорів про корисні копалини. І тому я хотів би до цього ставитись не теоретично, а практично. Коли буде кінцева версія від Сполучених Штатів Америки того чи іншого договору, чергового, тому що постійно змінюються умови. І мені здається, начебто ми вже домовилися, що буде рамкова угода, а потім повна угода. А зараз, я так розумію, команди україно-американські працюють над цим, тому що Америка зараз змінює ці правила і пропонує одразу угоду повну. А повна угода потребує детального вивчення цього, тому що це серйозні угоди, які ратифікуються в парламенті, але перед всім цим треба, щоб знов-таки юристи працювали. Тобто спочатку юристи працювали над однією угодою, потім над другою, в кінці кінців домовились про рамкову угоду, зараз нові правила. Ну що ж, ви знаєте, ми повинні діяти тут стримано, я б так сказав. Як ми намагаємось постійно діяти. Так, спокійно, не нервувати, а подивитись на угоду, юристи вивчать. Є речі там адекватні, будемо підтримувати. Якщо є питання завжди знаходять відповіді. Тому дуже рано говорити про угоду, варіант якої неодноразово змінювався. Але я не хотів би, щоб було відчуття у Сполучених Штатів Америки, що Україна проти в цілому. Ми показували постійно наші позитивні сигнали. Ми за співробітництво зі Сполученими Штатами Америки. Ми не хочемо давати жодних сигналів, що Сполучені Штати Америки спонукати Сполучені Штати Америки зупиняти Україні допомогу або зупиняти обмін розвідданими. Для нас важливо все це зберегти, і тому ми конструктивно діємо щоденно.
Дякую. Колеги, будь ласка, активніше піднімайте руки, щоб я бачив, хто хоче ставити запитання, а поки телеканал Інтер Україна так само. Over there.
Добрий день, Ніна Коломієць, телеканал Інтер, марафон «Єдині новини». Президент Макрон заявив за підсумками сьогоднішнього саміту, що франко-британська місія має вирушити до Києва, щоб визначити, що можна зробити для підтримки війська України. Розкажіть, будь ласка, деталі, які вам відомі, коли це станеться, про що саме йдеться і чи включає ця домовленість відправку військового контингенту? Чи є розуміння за результатами взагалі сьогоднішньої великої зустрічі, які країни готові це це зробити, у які терміни, в якому обсязі, чи є якась конкретика?
Ми приділяємо, дякую вам за запитання, приділяємо з президентом Макроном і з прем'єр-міністром Стармером і з іншими лідерами багато зараз уваги щодо інфраструктури, як я вже сказав, майбутньої інфраструктури гарантій безпеки для України. Важлива частина цієї інфраструктури – наша армія. Її фінансування, посилення Збройних сил України. Ми працюємо над тим, і це також сьогодні знов-таки спільний наголос всіх країн, що не може Росія диктувати щодо кількості нашої армії. Не зараз, не в майбутньому. Вони можуть там всередині своєї країни про щось говорити, це не цікаво. Але диктувати правила захисту України вони не можуть. І важливо, щоб в цьому напрямку у них не було підтримки. В Європі ми бачимо, що у них підтримки немає в більшості країн. Принаймні вся коаліція, яка сьогодні збиралась, всі підтримують, що Україна повинна зберегти сильну армію, таку, яка сьогодні протидіє російській навалі. І важливо, щоб таке відношення було і в Сполучених Штатах Америки, і тому сьогоднішня зустріч також передає такий сигнал і Сполученим Штатам Америки, і іншим. Що стосується далі, окрім нашої армії, гарантій безпеки, це стосується і контингенту. Є багато пропозицій від лідерів, і їх стало більше. Те, що збільшуються країни, які готові, хто як, хтось в небі, хтось ППО, хтось реально boots on the ground, а хтось на морі, Україні давати гарантії безпеки і відправляти свій контингент. Таких країн стає більше. Це хороша новина. А щодо дій, відповідальності, модальності цього контингенту, що він може, як його застосовувати, хто буде цим керувати, багато питань. Поки що мало відповідей. Зустріч буде. Франко-британська, як сказав Еммануель, я думаю, що ще долучиться, дехто ще може долучитись. І вони долучаться для того, щоб подивитись на той базис, який підготувала Україна. Як ми це бачимо, де ми це бачимо. Кількісний, якісний склад цього контингенту. Почати цей діалог більш предметно.
Дякую, будь ласка. Британські ЗМІ, чи є в залі британські ЗМІ?
And Hiram Slava. And with that, that is the end of the speech from President Volodymyr Zelensky here on day 1128 of the news of the war in Ukraine. And I hope that y'all all found his answers to those very tantalizing questions to be very interesting and very well informed, because we're going to be moving on into the second most well-informed segment of the stream, outside of that one, where we get to talk to all of y'all. And boy, howdy, is the fun time. Y'all know that cars and trains will be brought up at least once in this question segment. It always happens. Maybe even firearms. Sometimes that also happens as well. It used to happen a lot back in the day. But nevertheless, I do want to make sure that we get into that question segment expeditiously, so that way we can make sure to address as many questions as we physically can, because we love to address them and we like to talk to all of y'all, whether you're throwing in support or not. Once again, remember, folks, you don't have to throw in support to get your question answered, all right? You just have to throw in the question. It might be answered. I mean, I can't guarantee it. But if you support the channel, we read every single super chat. You don't have to. You can ask a question and it will probably be answered. But that's how it works around here. Just in case there's some folks that are new, because we have about 60,000 people who have watched the stream since it went live, and I gotta say that that's quite a lot of people right there. I mean, that's a lot of people. And also on top of that, we had a peak viewership of like almost 11,000 people here tonight. So a big thanks to all of y'all who have been here so far. We'd love to know that we are y'all's primary source of news, and we hope that the news coverage tonight has been what they would call back in the 40s, tops. And so with that, nevertheless, Matthew, it's time for us to get on into that question segment, and I understand that we got a lot of juicies to get on into. So what do we got, man? Actually, really quickly, we actually have a bit of an unfortunate poll about the fact that those U.S. soldiers that are still currently missing near Pabrade in Lithuania. So, Matthew, what are people saying about that, and what are you thinking about that as well?
All right. So the poll says Poland has now sent assistance to help locate the 4 missing U.S. soldiers in Lithuania. And what are your thoughts? 54% said the soldiers are unfortunately likely dead, while 16% said they already know what happened and they're keeping it from the public. And 16% said the soldiers are actually missing and they may still be alive. And so far, based on what I've heard, it sounds like their M88 went 16 feet deep into the water. So extremely deep. And they're having to suck all the water out of the body of water, which they drove it into, to actually get down there and get the vehicle out. So it's a humongous operation. And Poland is now sending their own equipment and soldiers to try to help get that vehicle out and also try to locate the soldiers. So at this point, I'm personally thinking that maybe the bodies of the soldiers are in the vehicle, or maybe they're somehow floated downstream or down away from the vehicle. And unfortunately, I do think, like last night, I think they're likely dead. So I'm with the 54%. But Enforcer, what say you?
I'd have to say that unfortunately I'm with the 54% as well. Hearing the fact that the vehicle is submerged in 16 feet of water, which is much different than the story we were being told yesterday, according to the information that we had, is leading us to believe that there is a highly likely chance that the crew was killed either in the crash and their bodies just floated out and down the way, or they attempted to ditch the vehicle and then they ended up drowning anyways. Because they haven't been found yet, the chances are highly unlikely that they will probably ever be found, to be entirely honest. But with that, I hope that addresses that somewhat well and an unfortunate sort of an answer. But with that, it is time for us to move on into the questions. So what do we got, Matthew?
And also, by the way, condolences to the soldiers and their families, because we haven't gotten official confirmation that they're dead yet, but it sounds like, based on the information, that unfortunately they probably are, is the unfortunate reality. So that's a sad situation. But with that, we're now moving on to our first super chat, the last segment. And this one goes to George Guede. And hopefully I'm saying your name right. I have a feeling I'm not.
Hey!
But, I'm trying to put a spin on it so that way it doesn't sound bad in a different way. But thank you very much, George, for that $100 support, and we appreciate that. He said, best channel on YouTube. I learned so much, and thanks, guys.
Hey, and thank you so much for the massive support, George Guede. And thank you for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And thank you for the kind words on saying that this is the best channel on YouTube. There are probably many that could take that spot from us, but I'm glad to know that you think that we are the best channel on YouTube, because it could be any other. And you are saying some very kind words there by stating that. And we are massively appreciative. And I also have to say, huge thanks to you as well for the massive support, because you're helping us to keep this channel running and helping us to be able to say all kinds of wild facts that we pull out of the ether and just start saying on air, so that way all of y'all might know a little something extra, might be a little wiser by the end of it. Y'all be half a wise guy like me. I'm just playing. A lot of y'all actually know way more than me. But I do have to thank you so much for the support, George, and such kind words and high praise, because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this channel possible, and we wouldn't been able to keep this thing running for so long, to be able to put out so many cool facts and sometimes useless facts. Like, for example, something that I was looking at today, something interesting. Oh, by the way, I better put this out while I still can. I am going to be not on the air. Like, we are not going to be running live streams from this Saturday to the next upcoming Tuesday. So from Saturday to Tuesday this week, I'm not going to be here. So there is not going to be any live streams being run during that time. I'm going to be off doing something else. Crazily enough, folks, y'all aren't going to believe it, I'm actually going to be on a short vacation. I will be back, but generally this vacation has a little bit of a business side to it. We are trying to figure out where Enforcer HQ 3.0 might be. So I'm in the process of looking at that a little bit myself, and also trying to have a little bit of R&R time. So actually that will be coming up soon. Can you believe it, folks? I haven't been in a union, and my boss finally gave me time off. If I'm not in a union and I'm getting time off, it can happen for you. but beyond that,
I'll be remaining here, folks. So don't worry. There will still be short war videos coming out daily, because guess what? I get to take every single one of them while the Enforcer's gone. So I get to go hard every day, I guess you could say. So very nice, but no streams, sadly. So I don't know what I'm going to do at night, but I'm not going on the vacation, sadly. I'll be going on one later, but not this one, because of course someone has to hold down the fort, and I'm going to do it.
Yes, and Matthew will be holding down the fort. Short war summaries will be coming out pretty much every day in replacement of the streams, which will not be running. But the streams will be running again on this upcoming Wednesday once we pass Saturday. Saturday to Tuesday, no streams. Streams will begin back again on Wednesday, and we will be back to our normal day in and day out coverage like we've been doing. There is, by the way, just to let y'all know what's coming down the pipe, there is also another very similar time window that's going to be happening on April 19th, where we are going to be gone from Saturday to Tuesday again. We're both going to be gone that time. But the streams and videos will begin again on that Wednesday, after, the whole April 19th downtime as well. Because just to let you all know a little bit of what's going on behind the scenes, Enforcer 2.0 has a little bit of a lifespan to it. Because, I'm not going to get into specific details, but Enforcer 2.0 has a lifespan to it, and Enforcer 2.0 cannot last forever. Enforcer 1.0 was pretty much what the channel ran under forever as far as its HQ went. Enforcer 2.0 is the one we're currently in, but Enforcer 2.0 is going to be coming to an end by the later point of this year for something that might become a little bit more permanent, which will be Enforcer HQ 3.0. So right now, we are having to figure out where Enforcer HQ 3.0 is going to be. And just to tell you all a little bit, it's not going to be limited to Alabama. It could be anywhere in the lower 48. So we are trying to figure that out right now. So we're kind of in the process of having to travel around and look at different places to figure out our options and figure out what's going to be going on and where it's going to end up being. So crazily enough,
Did you tell them about that trip we're taking to Greenland on the 19th?
We're not going to Greenland.
No,
we're not going
I'm sorry. I don't think Greenland's welcoming Americans at this point, so no. And also, by the way, if y'all don't know, Greenland going there is like one of the most expensive places you can go to when it comes to the flights. It's insane how much that costs.
Yeah, it's a fairly insanely expensive thing per person. It costs more to go there than to fly all the way to, say, Japan or someplace like that. But some of y'all are saying, where in the world are y'all going? Well, I don't want to say where. We're generally going to say where once we've actually gotten there, but for operational security reasons. But it can be anywhere within the lower 48. So it could be Maine, it could be Washington, it could be California, it could be Florida, it could be anything in between all of those. It literally could be anywhere. So, crazily enough, some of y'all might end up having Enforcer HQ right down the street from you by the time Enforcer HQ 3.0 ends up being stood up. So that'll actually be kind of neat in the end of things. But beyond that, an interesting fact that I wanted to share with y'all is that, and this is one that is actually pretty cool, I thought that this one would be pretty neat, is that the United States of America, I believe, is the only country in the world that actually has deserts and tundras inside of its national borders. We have the Mojave, I believe. Let me go find the damn Mojave. Yes, the Mojave. We have the Mojave. This is where they would film the Star Trek episodes with the Gorn, like literally right around here. And then also, we not only have the Mojave, but we have, and let me go up here, let me see if I can show it to y'all, tundras. Lots of them. It's actually kind of cool.
Tundra. Yeah, I like that, honestly. I like that. Also, someone said, hey, Enforcer, you ought to move to one of them tax-free states. Honestly, that's not a bad idea. I actually kind of like that idea, actually.
That's not a bad idea.
State tax, by the way, state tax, not federal. Like you don't escape federal taxes anywhere you go, but you can escape state sometimes.
Is it duty free? Like, is it duty free?
Is it dairy free?
Bobby,
Bobby, is it dairy free? Is it gluten?
Oh, dude, I wish I could do that one, man. I don't know how that would be received though. But also,
hey Tony, it's homie. Oh, hey homie, it's Tony. Would you like a beautiful sign? It's real human in design.
The design is very human, like and it's like a landmine or something like that. It's always something crazy. But let's see. Matthew, I was interested here, looking around here. What is the Kofa National Wildlife Refuge? Oh, well, that's actually pretty neat. Dude, it's a saguaro.
Wildlife.
It's a saguaro.
Oh, look at that.
That's pretty cool.
I like that, actually.
I think these things are called saguaros, right? Like, I think. But, man, look at them. They're cool. They're cool.
Also, let's see. Sean Willems said, also, you give up state income tax for high sales tax. I know. I realized that in Texas because I actually did research on that. I was like, hey, look, I think Texas has no state like income tax. That's beautiful. Texas is the way to go. Then I looked at the property taxes in Texas and also the sales taxes. I'm like, oh, okay. They got rid of state income tax and they replaced it with high taxes of every other category. So they just played games with the numbers, basically. So you're not escaping the taxes. They just shifted them to a brand new category.
Man, that's how it is all the damn time, man. Like whenever you think there's going to be like a tax, a tax rebate or there are no taxes. No, it's just taxes in a different way. Like one thing we've never heard about being from Alabama is this thing in Texas called the mud tax, where apparently you have to pay for your utilities, like, you know, your water piping installed into your house. There's something called the mud tax, apparently, where you get taxed to have connection to the water, and then you also get billed for the water too, separately by the city utility. It's like, that's kind of crazy. Like that you would, like, I've never heard of that before, actually. So that was brand new to me when I heard about that in Texas. But Texas is pretty interesting. It's an interesting place. Oklahoma is a really interesting place because they get hit by like EF5s every year. You know, and coming from a state that is considered the epicenter of Dixie Alley, which is our version of Tornado Alley, I got to tell you, I'm done with tornadoes. I'm not moving anywhere where there are a significant amount of tornadoes. They are terrifying. They are scary. People always get killed in them. And you're always just praying that you're not one of those people. So I'd rather not. So I'm going to be moving away from anywhere where there's a tornado. So I can tell you that Oklahoma is certainly off of the list. On the other hand, Colorado, you know, I always wanted to smell the smell of skunk ass every time I walked out the door. I always wanted to. You know, the smell of skunk ass and the zest of lime. There was always something that I craved. I'm just kidding, by the way. Colorado actually is really nice. I've heard from one of my friends that I have in Colorado Springs that it smells of weed everywhere, which he says gives him a headache. So that he's complaining about that a lot, honestly, these days, just to be honest with y'all. But beyond that, Colorado is actually gorgeous. Like most of the states, just unbelievably beautiful. Like, look at that.
That is beautiful, actually. I like that.
Yeah, that's really nice. Like, honestly, I really like the natural beauty of Colorado. And there's also some really neat things to do in Colorado, you know, like railroading wise. Matthew's about to like die if I mention trains. So I'm going to skip over the whole like details on the trains. But there are a lot of historic railroads in Colorado because they are naturally beautiful and they're really fun to ride. But Colorado's pretty neat. Utah's interesting. It's just that I don't like living in deserts. So that largely kind of rules it out for me. So anywhere where there's a desert, you can largely expect I'm not going to be living there. But you know, a cool state is North Dakota. Take a look at North Dakota. Nothing but perfect flatness for hundreds of miles. And this hellish looking place looks like the devil just lived here or something like a week ago. Also, we have this large lake that looks like a small beach. We also have this. I don't know what's up with the spawn of Satan in North Dakota, but there's for some reason the sky is green a lot up there. A little odd to me.
Yeah, honestly, it's a little bit more than odd. What's going on here? Like, what is this?
They're summoning Hot Dog Man.
Oh.
Aw, man, it's time to do stupid shit. Like, it's time to do something stupid and then blame everyone else for my poor decisions. Aw, man. Oh, what's that? What's that right there? That's an interesting building. But still, North Dakota, it's interesting. Montana, though, there's nothing there. There's very beautiful mountains, but there's like nobody living in Montana. Like we've been through there, and it was literally desolate with the amount of people living there. Like the population density is less than a person per square mile, I would assume, because
every time I look at Montana, there's always like the very minor urge to see this land out here and think I would like to go live out here off the grid for a bit and just go have like a place out here with a Starlink or something on it and just do that. But at the same time, though, it's like I'd probably get old.
If you think you're going stir crazy here, Matthew, wait until you get out there. Like then you're really going stir crazy because all you can do is walk endlessly and there's nothing to do, you know, like beyond walking and maybe shooting a gun on federal land. So, it's peaceful. Yes, I would say it's very peaceful. But just to let y'all know, we kind of grew up with that life. We lived in the middle of the woods our entire childhood growing up. And I'll be honest with y'all, It sounds peaceful until you're out there and you got nothing to do, and then it's really boring. So then you start to become someone who's searching for something to do, kind of like we are. But you know, there's all kinds of cool places like Pennsylvania. Haven't y'all ever looked at Pennsylvania, the beautiful state of Pennsylvania? Haven't y'all ever seen the beautiful state? The Keystone State's what they call it. Oh, look, railroad tracks. Some of those are poorly maintained, honestly. But let's see here. Oh, look, Philadelphia City Hall. Probably one of the nicest city halls in all of America, really.
Yeah, I'd personally not like to live in Philadelphia because it's just kind of dangerous from what I've heard.
Man, I heard that they got tenderloins there that are pretty nice. Maybe I'll go check them out sometime.
Yeah, maybe so. I think I'd rather move to Minnesota, to be honest with you. I'd rather go to Minnesota and drag my nuts over the place.
Aw, man. Would you like to drag your nuts over the suburbs of Minneapolis? Perhaps Brooklyn?
Oh, that's
Park?
Minneapolis. What did I say?
You said Minnesota. You said the state. So you're going to drag your nuts from
man.
north to south. That's quite an undertaking, man, honestly. Like, really.
That's terrible. That's terrible, honestly. Not the entire state.
Aw, man, you could go to Minneapolis, you could go to Brooklyn Park, or maybe Blaine, or maybe Circle Pines. Aw, man, or maybe Rice Lake. They put rice in this lake. Aw, man, or maybe Baldwin or Golden. These are so poorly named. Like, anyways, moving on from that. You know one more place. I was just thinking of Pennsylvania, Matthew. This would be a cool one to show you. Williamsport, Philadelphia. Take a gander.
Yeah, I'll be honest with you. I don't like Pennsylvania. Like, no offense to anybody that lives in Pennsylvania. I'm just not a huge fan of it. I'm not a huge fan, really, of too many of the New England area states either. That area. It's just not my thing. Like, I'd like to visit it to see it, but I don't want to live there for whatever reason.
This is where our nation was born.
It's a little too something. I can't place it.
This is where our nation was born. It's a sad thing that you would forsake it. So
yeah, but I mean, I was born in Montgomery, Alabama, but I wouldn't want to go live in it.
Well, that's not where the nation was born, man. I mean,
well, the nation of Matt was born in Montgomery, Alabama, and you know it came to be, and it's since left, and it will never return.
Well, I'll tell you what, Matthew, I'll be damned. I'll tell you, I like to go live in King of Prussia. What does this look like? Oh, wow, that's actually a nice mall. Holy moly, that's a nice mall.
Wow, that actually is a nice mall. That's like, this is like Prussia.
Man, it's like the damn King of Prussia lives here. Damn, like, honestly, this is crazy. Look at that. They got a damn crate and barrel. They're so damn nice, they don't even have Cracker Barrel. They got crate and barrel.
I can tell you right now, whatever that is, everything's expensive. Anything that's named Crate and Barrel or like Cheese and Block or something like that, it's going to be like real hippie, real expensive, real modern.
Man, they even got a damn bee farm. They call it Honey Grow.
That's going to be expensive too. Anything in that font, like for a business, is going to be expensive.
Man, hell, King of Prussia's kind of looking nice. Look at that. They got the damn Grand Lux Cafe, man. They got Morgan's, Brooklyn, and barbecue up in there. Damn.
I'm seeing a lot of luxury around here.
Man, they got Wegmans.
That's a grocery store, I think.
I never even heard of Wegmans. I'll tell you what. Let's see here. They got the damn Shake Shack. They got, I don't know what the hell a concrete is, and I don't know how you eat a slab of concrete, but they got them. They got burgers, frozen custard, fries, shakes, hot dogs, concrete, burgers, frozen custard, and fries. It just keeps going on and on. And they got Rock Bottom. That's where Hot Dog Man's at. Man. And that's in Minneapolis.
That's my building. Oh, man. Let me have it.
Man, it's shaped like a trash can, so that way you can pop out of the top and go, oh, man. They got
like Marksco the Grouch.
Yeah, like that guy, like Karl Marx the Grouch or something, you know? And then they got that damn indoor skydiving in case you're too wimpy to go skydiving in the normal sky, which is free. You also got Seasons 52, which tastes like shit. We went to one and it's not good. I promise you that. Too uppity for me. I like to have real tasting food. Oh, they got a casino. They got a casino. You ever wanted to lose all of your money? Go on down to the casino. Go get yourself some nice food and then go to the slot machine and kid yourself into believing that you'll win it big when you know you won't. What else do we have here? We got Starbucks.
They have Costco's.
Oh, hell, we got a Costco. You know, they ain't that big for that. Oh, look, they got a little wooden bridge, though. Now, that is nice.
That is nice right there. Well, our law school had one of those. It brought back memories of walking across the bridge right into misery.
I'll be damned. I hated walking across that bridge every day. I'm telling you what, I was like, that sucked hell. That was terrible. Absolutely. But let's see here. Damn, you know something, man? It just hit me. That's right outside of Philadelphia. That must be the nice place that people go, you know, and live in, and then they drive into Philadelphia, you know? That makes sense.
They tell people don't drive into Philly because you drive into Philly and you're going to get a little bit killed, I think, because it's very dangerous.
They going to fill you with lead.
They sling lead like the devil.
Man, you sitting there and you go down there, you smells of sulfur, not because the devil's there, it's just because so many people are shooting their damn guns all day long down in the streets. And then they got a museum called the Please Touch Museum. Man, I'm telling you what, that's a weird name museum right there. And I also got to tell you another thing on top of that. You know, when you look around these streets, you sit there and go, hey, that doesn't look that bad. Well, that's until we drop you down into this area of the city right here. This actually ain't that bad for Philadelphia.
That doesn't look that great. I'm not going to lie.
All right, but here we go. We're about to drop down into the real area. We're about to drop down into East Kensington. It's time for us to go straight to hell. The pits of hell, purgatory they call it. And here it is, East Kensington. It is an absolute hellhole. You should get shot and died. Your wallet is gone. It is like a magic trick. Honestly, this place has one of the highest crime rates in the entirety of the United States of America. The only place to beat it is Bessemer, Alabama, and we're right next to it. So, it cannot get any worse than that. But also, man, you know something that's kind of cool to me? This always blows me away, side note, is the Susquehanna River right here. Susquehanna. Oh, what? Oh, wait, is this a nuclear power plant?
It's an atomic power station.
Dude, it's that Oppenheimer, cheat on your wife nuclear power plant. Let's see.
It's Peach Bottom.
It's got a damn peachy bottom. It's like juicy like a peach. But anyways, moving on from that. One thing that's cool to me, Matthew, about the Susquehanna River is the fact that it cuts clean through the Appalachian Mountains. Like, look at that. Literally clean through them.
I remember when I grew up in the Appalachians. I remember I was just a little boy in the Appalachians. And then one day I put on eyeliner and I ran for politics.
Well, I'll tell you what, Matthew. One day I was growing up in the Appalachian city of Middletown, Ohio. And I was sitting there and I was bored one day. And all of a sudden I sat there and looked at a couch and it was looking at me all funny like. Looking like it was wanting to get some. and from there it was history.
Leave him alone. Leave that couch alone. That's a rooms to go couch. You can't do that one. No, not the other couch. Yeah, oh no. You know, there's a furniture brand out there called Hooker. That would be a very unfortunate couch to be in the vicinity, honestly. Leave the hooker alone. Don't touch that couch.
Man, oh man, imagine if the vice president had one of those couches and his wife walked in. It's not what you think.
Oh, geez.
Oh boy, man, you know, it's something, I tell you. But you know something I want to show y'all here? I want to show y'all the Appalachians, right? Middletown, Ohio. Let's go check it out. Wow. It's so flat here. It's like there's not a single mountain around. It's like it's at least 150 miles away from the actual Appalachian Mountains. Isn't that crazy? Isn't that crazy? You know, like it's almost like someone who was born in Middletown, Ohio would never have a claim to actually being from the Appalachian Mountains. That's nuts. You know what? Let's go check out the Appalachian mountain community. Let's go check that out, because I'm sure they have a map that lays out the counties that are in the Appalachian Mountain community, and let's take a look at who's in it and who's not. Let's see. Ah, yes. It looks like people who are in the mountains are in that region. What is that? What is that right there, Matthew? Do you see that? Right here at this bend of the river, right where Cincinnati's at, just a little bit east of that, the Appalachians end. That means that Middletown, Ohio technically isn't even in the Appalachian Regional Commission. Huh.
Interesting.
Crazy, right? It's like someone who claims that they're from the Appalachians who lived in this town is flat out lying. Like, that would be crazy if that was the case.
What's the big deal about like claiming you're in the Appalachians? Does that mean something to people? Because I'm like, whenever I hear it, I'm like, does that really like, is that supposed to like make people like you or something? Because I don't understand like the significance of it personally.
I'll explain to you why, Matthew. It's called pandering. And when you pander, especially in the certain party that individual's in, you want to sound like a blue-collar countryman. And what better way to sound like that than coming from the Hillbilly Mountains? I was born and raised in the Hillbilly Mountains. I lived in a flat area of Ohio, so flat there wasn't even a hill. But I'll claim, damn it, I'm from the mountains. It's like, no, the hell you're not. Like I just got to be honest with y'all, that's something I've had a problem with since I first heard about it. That Hillbilly Elegy book. Like, I'll just be flat up on this one. That annoyed the hell out of me, because technically, if y'all look at this, our county, or like where we're from, our hometown is down here in Alabama, just north of Montgomery. It's called Wetumpka. We actually grew up in the Appalachian Mountain Range, if you technically want to say that, although I would say that Elmore was certainly not in the Appalachians. It is in the Appalachian Regional Commission. So technically, if you want to work by technicality, we grew up in the foothills of the Appalachian Mountains. I would never claim that a day in my life, because if you ever go down to Elmore, there's like some hills, but there's no mountains. So I don't
But they definitely got the Billies, though.
Oh, they got the Billies, right? You know, they do have those, but they don't have
the hill.
They don't have any of them hills. The hills really start up here, like around Birmingham, and then go north of that. So technically, we are from the Appalachian Mountains. I still wouldn't claim that, though, because it wasn't really the mountains. The vice president, who wrote the book Hillbilly Elegy, claims that he grew up in the Appalachians, and his book was a slice of life from the Appalachians. And he grew up in Middletown, Ohio, which isn't even in the Appalachian Regional Commission, and much less, it's sure as hell nowhere near a mountain. So the entire premise of the book is a lie. Like, he just isn't from the Appalachians, much like we aren't, and we're in the Regional Commission for it. So that just irks me a lot, because it's pandering to the extreme. The entire book is a lie. The entire book is pandering at that point. Like I'll show you some hills. You want to see some hills? We can go to the Monongahela National Forest. I don't even know how to pronounce that, but these are mountains. Like, this is the Appalachian Mountains right here. But anywhere else, if it doesn't actually look like real mountains, then you're lying to say that you're from the Appalachians, because you're really not. Even if you're in the Appalachian Regional Commission, to me, if you're not in the mountains, you're not an Appalachian. Like, that's just how it works. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. Yuck. And with that, it is time for us to get out of our hillbilly hell and move on into our questions. So what do we got, Matthew?
All right. So with that, we're now moving on moving on to our next super chat question. Excuse me, by the way, that was a loud hack right there. I don't know what even brought that on, but we are now moving on to our next super chat, which goes to Old Warrior, who's a longtime channel legend as well. And thank you very much, Old Warrior, for that $50 support, and we do appreciate that very much. And he said, your KTM comment. He said, quote unquote, Red Bull KTM factory racing has been a part of the MotoGP elite since the start of 2017. In 2024, the team secured second place in the Constructors' Championship, highlighting the strength of the KTM RC16, that is MC-F1 equivalent. And the KTM RC16 is quite a nice a piece of kit right there, I must say. The MotoGP, we've actually seen that in person once. I made the enforcer go see that, kind of like he makes me go see the trains. And it was very cool to see. We actually ran across one of the racers after he wrecked his bike, and we actually ran across the guy. And the weirdest thing is we walked up to him. He was like, "Hey guys, you want a picture?" Or like, did we ever get the picture with the guy or not?
Nah, dude, we told him we were good, and we just kept walking.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah, that was the thing. And we were new to it because I wasn't really much into MotoGP at the time when we saw it. But the guy was like, "Hey guys, you want a picture?" And we were like, I really don't know who the guy is really." It's like, "Oh, well, no, like we hope you're okay from that wreck, but no, we'll let you go about your business and not bother you and stuff." So thanks very much. It turned out the guy was one of the most famous MotoGP racers that just happened to be walking past the back spot that we were walking. It's like, oh damn! It's like I didn't even know that. If I'd have known more about it, I would have probably said, yeah, we'll get a picture like with the right bike and everything like that. But you live and learn a little bit. But KTM, they do make some good bikes. Hopefully they stay solvent because they're doing some problems right now with their finances. But Enforcer, what say you?
I hope they stay soluble. But beyond that, I'm just kidding, old warrior. I thank you for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And my statements about KTMs being worthless wasn't about the quality of KTMs. As many people do know, KTM motorcycles are actually very good. It was about the fact that their company is going broke. That was really the thing, because everyone's trying to get rid of their KTMs right now before they can't even get them serviced. So at least at this point, KTMs are almost, worthless in an economic sense, because there won't even be a company or infrastructure left to support them if the company collapses. Hopefully it doesn't. But I do thank you for support, old warrior, and you are right. KTM is a good brand. I'd have to agree with that. It's a shame to hear what they're going through economically right now, but still, they are a very good brand. And so with that, I hope that does address that the best I can, at least in my opinion. And thank you once again for the support and making this channel possible and helping it to keep on running. And also, Brittany Coy asked me, have you ever heard of the blue people from Eastern Kentucky? People don't think they're real, but they are. I have heard of the blue people. They're people who are, I'm just going to have to say it for what it is. They're so incest bred, their skin turned blue. Like, yes, I have heard of them. They do exist. But the most famous incestuous family from the Appalachians is the Whitaker family, who was, heavily documented on YouTube and apparently ended up running, I believe, allegedly some form of a scam. I'm not entirely sure on that, but there was a huge scandal about that I remember a while ago. But that's probably one of the most famous types of those families from the Appalachians. But yes, I have heard of them. And that's kind of historically a thing that happens in the mountain regions because it's difficult to travel in the mountains. People sit there and they have no one else around rather than their near family, so things start to happen. I'm not justifying it. It is gross and illegal, but that historically is usually the reason why you would find that incest rates are higher in mountainous regions than in flatlands, where it's a lot easier to get around. So that's something like. I gotta say, it's gross, but when you understand historically where it's coming from, you can. I still don't get it, but you can kind of see why it would have happened. At least kind of see some of the justification behind it, but it's still absolutely just nasty to me. It honestly makes me cringe even talking about it right now. But yes, I have heard of those people. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that well. And with that, it's time for us to move on to the next one.
All right, so our next one goes to Robbie Constance, who puts in a $31 donation. Thank you, Robbie, as well, for that $31 support, and we do appreciate that very, very much. And he said, keep up the great reporting, boys. I love the passion and the past versus current admin. Plus, Australia has desert and tundra, and you tariff-dropping bastards.
Well, thank you for the support. And I have to say, that's interesting here that you also have tundra as well. Where is the Australian tundra? Where would that be? Well, let me go type that in. Australian tundra. The Toyota Tundra. That is a car. Let's see. Is there a tundra biome in Australia? Australia has a tundra ecoregion in its Antarctic islands. So technically, y'all actually do. It's not on the mainland of Australia. It's actually on some of their Antarctic islands. So that's pretty cool to hear. Didn't know that actually. But beyond that, I thank you for the support and sharing that information with us. And I also got to thank you for supporting this channel and helping it to keep on running all the way from the great land of Australia. Because folks like you help to make this thing possible and help us to keep it rolling. And if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't have been able to make this thing possible for so long and be able to be here talking tonight. So a huge thanks to you once again, Robbie Constance, for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And thank you so much for enjoying the passion in my little soapbox that I did earlier. Some people don't like it when I point out what I think are just clear facts at this point. But I like to point them out from time to time because, I got to position myself to become the president of the United States, or at least at a minimum get put in prison for trying in a couple of years. And so with that, thank you once again. I hope that this addressed that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to James Hughes, who puts in a $30 donation as well. And thank you very much, James, for always supporting the channel also. And we do appreciate that support as well. He said, I found a U.S. government site that states the U.S. has $39.6 billion not yet allocated, plus another $60 billion in allocated but not yet distributed funds. And the USA has the money waiting. And will the current president spend it?
Technically, by act of Congress and approval of the last president, he has to. So yes, he will eventually have to spend it, unless if he tries to conduct some games, and those games might succeed because the Congress isn't majority against him. It's half and half at this point. So even if he's doing something that would generally be considered outside of the duties of the office of the president, there probably wouldn't be enough grounds to impeach him over it, or at least enough support in the Congress to impeach him over it. So with that, I hope that does address that somewhat well, because it could go either way at this point. But I do thank you once again for the support and help with this channel to keep on running, because folks like you help to make it possible and help it to keep on rolling. And with that, we are on to the next one.
Also, by the way, a bootlegger said, you seem to like the race bikes more, Matt. So here's a Harley race bike, 1964 Aramaki Harley-Davidson race bike. Honestly, I didn't even know Harley-Davidson made a race bike, so I'll be very curious to see those. So I think the Enforcer is currently pulling it up so we can all look at it together as one big live stream. Oh, is that really it? Wait a minute, click on that for a second. That's actually very unique. I've never seen this before. I didn't know Harley was involved in something like this. This is very un-Harley-like. Actually, that's actually kind of unique. Click on that first one, by the way, the one with the flag on the tank. That actually, honestly, looks pretty good. Actually, I kind of like that. I like the paint scheme too. That's nice. But yeah, I am into race bikes a lot more. I don't really like cruiser style bikes. That's a little bit more on the cruiser side right there. But I like the really fast racing bikes. Those are the ones I'm really a big fan of. But what do you think, Enforcer?
This one's actually pretty cool. I like it. It's neat. It looks unique. I think it's cool. I think it's cool just for the fact it just looks cool. You know, I don't have any other justification for liking it rather than it's cool. But it is only a 175cc motor, so you know, take that for what you want.
Back in the day, that wasn't too bad actually. That was a good bike.
Well, man, you keep shitting on the Halcyons that are 450cc's. This one's only 175.
Why would you go for that these days when you have, 200 horsepower, 1000cc monsters? I mean, why would you go for something like that when you go for, like, for example, like something that could break your neck?
Because I like class, Matthew. It's not all about power. It's about class sometimes. And this thing just looks classy to me.
I say do away with class. We want power.
We want a classless system. We do not want this hanky-pank little Janus motorcycle. It looks like it's old and decrepit, kind of like every president that we've had in this term, the last one and the one before that. Everyone was over 80. It felt like, at least. But beyond that, I gotta say that this motorcycle is terrible. This is exactly what Big Motor wants us to buy, are these stupid little weak motorcycles that look cool, but they're not great. They're terrible little... honestly, I like them a lot. I actually think they're really cool. And a lot of people who've gotten these actually have said a lot of good things about them. So if you want, try and get one of these. They're a little pricey, though, like I will admit. But they are really cool. I think in the end, for like a Halcyon 450, they end up getting up to like $12,000 or $13,000.
Oh,
but it's because
$12,000 for a bike that goes 90.
But it's because it's handmade.
Oh, come on, man. I mean, I think like the Ninja H2 is handmade too, but I mean,
It's handmade by the Amish, so you know it's handmade because they sure as hell aren't using anything that's not handmade.
The Amish put this together?
Yeah, the Amish make a lot of parts for this thing. Like, they make the gas tank, they make, I think, the like wheels, well, the spokes and such things. Like, they make a decent amount of the non-mechanical components of these motorcycles. The motors are, I think, I forgot what the motors are, but then a decent amount of it's actually made by the Janus Motor Company, like the mufflers and such things. But the Amish actually do make some parts of this motorcycle.
I thought that was against their whole thing, was to have stuff like this. So they're making parts for it. It's kind of interesting.
Well, it's against them to own it, but it's not against them to make parts for them.
Oh, so a little bit of not using it, but a little bit of making that cash off of it, kind of deal.
Yeah, man. They got to make a little cash. They got to make a little cash.
They went from making butter to making bikes. That's kind of like a bikes and butter type situation right there.
Man, they said a bread and butter. What was that name, Matthew? It was butter or guns or something like that.
Guns and butter.
Guns and butter. It's like, why don't we just grease the guns and butter and call it a day? Get them both. It's like get them both. Be a big boy.
I love how those historian people, those people that do history and stuff like that, want to sit there and like say that 50 times while they're teaching it too. Like guns and butter, guns and butter. It's a good
Man,
guns and butter. You won't even know what the hell it means. You'll just know the term guns and butter because they get so focused on that term.
Man, I'm not gonna lie, man. Whenever people start using a catchphrase way too much, it gets on my nerves. And everyone's about to be like, but you say "and with that" a million times. And yeah, I know it would get on my nerves if I wasn't the one saying it. Like, I'd be like, damn, can he stop saying it? But it gets on my nerves when people use like phrases like, you teach a man to fish, you know, and it's like, come on, we've heard this a million times. Or that one, Matthew, guns and butter. It's like, can you just like explain like what you actually mean rather than feeling cool because you said a catchphrase that 900 million people have said 900 gazillion freaking times? Like, man, I remember that in some of my history classes. But I'll be honest with you, man, I would write damn dissertations in some of those history classes. I would get A's on them, and I get A's just because I knew the subject matter, man. Like, I would be sitting there going and getting the first-hand and second-hand sources and just writing a paper, and mostly off of my knowledge, but then also citing the first-hand and second-hand sources. And I get A's, and they'd just be like, wow, this is great. I'd be like, yeah, thanks. I was like, because I don't use catchphrases. It's like, that's why it's great, because I actually know what it's about. But anyways, with that, it is time for us to move on to the next one. And George Tincher said hot butter would actually make a good lubricant for your guns too. I don't know about that. Like, we might have to test that one. I'm not really sure on that one actually. Maybe I'll have to check with our gun experts here because I've never seen anyone like lubricate a gun with butter. I have a feeling there might be some pretty big issues with that in the long run. But still, we are on to the next one.
And our next super chat goes to James Spell, who puts in a 20. And thank you very much, James, for that $20 support as well. And we do appreciate that very much. And James said, with trains being the primary mode of transport by the Russians and the new long-range capabilities, do you expect that Ukraine to start striking the rail bridges?
Oh, that's a tough one. That's a tough one because railroad bridges are pretty thick. I'll actually show y'all some that Matthew and me have seen a lot recently. Let's go down here to Irondale. Oh, Matthew's gonna love it. He's like, oh, it's those bridges, those bridges. Here they are. They're these right here. These bridges were actually built in the 20s, mind y'all, so that's why they look old. Honestly, they had a lot more detail to them, and while the concrete's looking pretty busted these days, and these bridges are pretty much crumbling, I actually do have to say, man, I like the style of them more than the modern ones that just look like shit, you know? Like, they're not bad.
Yeah, but the problem is when you drive under these, you feel like they're like deathly unsafe or something, or at least that's the way I feel driving under it. Like it's like, how old are these things and how much weight are they really holding up? They're holding up like two trains crossing over at the same time. It's like, I don't know.
But to show y'all the steel reinforcement of these bridges, those are all steel girders. Massive, like some of the heaviest weight steel girders you can find. And then under that is a steel plate. And so it's a pretty well-built system. It would be pretty hard to blow this thing away, actually, or really cause a lot of damage to it with, let's say, your normal kind of drone ordinances of like 50 and 100 kilograms. Now, if you hit this thing with several thousand pounds of explosives, it would cause damage. But beyond that, it's going to be really tough to actually cause any kind of permanent damage to these bridges that wouldn't be anything more than superficial if Russian bridges are built to the same standard. So it would be pretty tough to do. Also, by the way, someone just pointed out this is pre-war steel. That is correct. This is actually pre-war steel, meaning that it's not radioactive. So that's kind of neat too. And I wonder, Matthew, when they replace these bridges, they're probably going to end up recycling that steel because remember we learned a while ago from, I think it was Walter Lakota, that pre-war steel is heavily sought after because it's not radioactive and can be used to calibrate medical instruments.
Yeah, I guess they'll be using that radioactive stuff next time, whenever they replace this in 100 years.
Yeah, I suppose so, because in 100 years, I don't know if this will survive that long. Honestly,
that's when they'll replace it in about 100 years or so.
Dude, it literally would be on the road below by the time they replace it, honestly. But let's, Matthew, I wonder if we drop this down, what can we see here? Oh, wow, this was actually wildly empty. Look at that, man. You could see all the way back there.
Ah, yes, the Yard of Hump.
The Hump of Yard. The Yard of Hump. This place looked like kind of different 4 years ago, honestly. Like, not really too different, but slightly different.
Was that hump yard jack sign still down there?
No, the hump yard jack sign is gone. It's been replaced by a small Christmas tree.
No, it was down the way. Turn to the right and go down the road. That's to the
No,
left.
no. Go check your Discord DM, dude. It's on this telephone pole right here. I promise you, like it is.
Hop back over to the other pole and see if it's over there on the other one. Down there, yeah.
No, it wasn't on this one, dude. It was in the middle of the tracks. I promise you. Go check your Discord DMs. Do it, dude. I promise you.
Oh,
it's
yeah.
there.
I see it now. It was on the other one.
Yeah,
so it's new since 2021.
So they put the hump yard jack thing on there at some point during the last guy's presidency, I guess. So I guess it's like a direct joke at him. That is funny, though. I do have to admit, like, we got a chuckle out of it. And also, man, let's see, maybe I can show you something. Oh, look. Fish plates. Well, there's loads of them. There's millions of them. But, oh, damn it, I forgot what these things are called. Rivet joints, I think, something like that. It's not continuously welded rails, so that's actually kind of cool to see. You can see that all the way through the yard. Usually yard tracks are actually made to where there's shorter, like, beams of track that are used. And that's why you hear near rail yards that little click-clack of the trains crossing over, because they're hitting the little fissures that are in between the two pieces of rail that are joined together with the rivet plate, which is kind of cool. But there's another cool thing to show y'all. If I can. Let's see, I think I have to drop it down here again and then just spin this way. So, if we look down here, there should be something cool to show y'all. There should be something cool. Oh yeah, look, there's the automatic switch control system. So this thing actually automatically moves that switch. You don't have to get out and manually switch it.
That's pretty neat. That's a nice automation.
Yeah, and the light system right there tells you, like, which direction it's going. So green is straight, and I think these other aspects mean that you're going, I think there's an aspect for, like, a third track, but there is an aspect meaning that you would be going right. So you look at those little things on the ground, and depending on the aspect color down there, you know if the switch is set to be straight ahead, or if you're going to be moving over onto another track. But somewhere down there, there's these little, like, iron, kind of like little pencil-shaped pieces that stick out from the ground, and they're soldered right onto the side of the rail. And that's actually how the signal systems work. Now, that would be a lot more difficult to explain. I'm not even going to explain it here because that would take like 10 minutes, and I don't want Matthew to get like zoned out from hearing something that boring. But that's how the signal systems work, is that they run electrical pulses through the rails, and those little sprigs of metal welded onto the side of the rails are what send the electrical the electrical current through the rails. You will not get electrocuted if you touch a railroad. Like, you will not. Like, you will not die from it. But there is a little electrical pulse going through them. It's not even, it's hardly anything at all. Like, you could literally fall on a rail and sit there for hours. You're not ever even going to feel it. But still, it is pretty neat. Anyways, it is time for us to move on to the next one. I thought I'd just tell y'all some neat stuff about that. Anyways, what do we got, Matthew?
All right. So with that, we are now moving on from that. Do we need to get a live chat question? Do we need to get one?
I don't know. Did the last super chat request a live chat question?
Let's see. I don't think it did. But once again, big thanks for that support, by the way, and we do appreciate that. And we're now moving on to our next super chat, which goes to John Jivenstead, who puts in a $20 donation. And thank you very much, John, for that $20 support. I think that might have been your first ever super chat of the stream, but it didn't say on the YouTube dashboard. But if it is, thank you very much for that. And if it isn't, thank you very much for that as well. But John did not leave a comment. But thank you very much once again. And Enforcer, what say you?
I gotta thank you so much for the support and help of this channel to keep on running. You didn't throw in a comment, but the support means a lot and helps us to make this thing possible. And so a huge thanks to you so much once again. And we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Quantum Fighter, who puts in a 20 as well. And thank you very much, Quantum Fighter, for that support as well. Excuse me. And they said, war. They said, war. I'm going to give it to you. Like, wait a minute, hold on. I don't know what this is. I'm going to say it anyway. It said war. I'm going to give it to you. Like, oh man, cocaine. Straight from Bolivia. And they said Wu-Tang forever. I think it's a rap gang, rap group. Can we take a peek at Les Balles de Provence? This is what Russia want and ain't have because they suck in the Army Reserves and just got called up.
Oh, and best of luck to you in the Army Reserves. Sounds interesting. You just got called up, Quantum Fighter. But best of luck to you up there in Sweden. And also, let's pull up that Les Balles de Provence. So let's see. Le Beau de Provence. Let's see. Oh, here it is. This. Where is this in France? Oh, this is really south, near Marseille and Montpellier. So let's take a gander. Oh, look at that. That's actually pretty cool.
That is neat, actually. Is that Montpellier?
No, this is near to Montpellier, but it's not Montpellier. Look at those rocks, though, man. Look at those rocks. Heavens.
Man, that rocks.
Man. Oh, man, they got that rock. Is it... This place looks like it might be abandoned. Let me go in there and take a little bit better of a look. Let's see here. Let's just drop down on a street view. That ought to do us well. This is wild.
Oh, they have these boulders here. If you mess up driving, you're finished.
Man, these boulders. Man, that's a clean cut right there, actually. Very clean. Dude, this is actually be cool to go through and take a look at.
That would be. I don't know how they got those cuts that clean on that rock.
Man, honestly, man, because in America, we blow those things out with dynamite in wedge shapes nearly. Like, it's not clean like that at all. That's very impressive. Very, very... what food is here at Le Grand Brasserie? Oh, they got the liquor. Oh, what's this? Is that...
They got clams.
They got clams. They got mozzarella balls. They've got roasted chicken legs, I suppose.
They have chicken! Roasted chicken!
They have... I don't know what that is. That's alfalfa sprouts on top of cat food. And then they got... Is that a bowl made out of bread?
I think it is.
That's actually pretty cool. They've got this le fiche.
Damn, boy, they got the raw fish on the plate.
Man, that's kind of reminds me of China when they're still like flipping and flopping and all that. We've got shit on a plate. With cream. We also have a lobster. It appears down there. It looks good actually. I'm not gonna lie. The French always dress their food in a way I just never understand it. Like I don't understand what looks appetizing about it to me because they always look a little. It almost looks a little bit arrogant, like with how it's presented, or it looks like it's not good, like that. I don't even know what that is.
That's grouper with a side of mishmash.
Man, that's grouper with a side of the shit we found out the trash can. We just scooped our hand in it and put it on the plate. Man, in America, that wouldn't pass.
Crab cake? Or a doo-doo patty.
I don't get it, folks. I don't get it. I hate to tell y'all that. I really do. You know what? Let's make it fair. Let's go to Germany and let's go look at a restaurant in Mannheim in Germany just because we want a real German
We want a real restaurant in the Mannheim Steamroller. Yeah.
We want real German food. Oh, look at that. See, that's good food right there.
That looks like a pancake. Yes, a strudel.
Look at omelet. Dude, this is food. Look at that. This is food you can get behind.
They're bringing in a panini. Oh, yeah. Oh, look, a pot of stew or a pot of...
I don't even know what that is. I don't know. They have a fruit bowl.
Oh, wow. That looks really good. I would like that.
They have a toast with omelet, eh? And now let's make it really fair. Let's go to Britain and let's go to Oxford because there should be a lot of traditional British food here. There should be. Oh, come on. Come on.
Like Nando's, yeah.
Nando's isn't traditional British. Get the hell out of here. Ethiopian and Eritrean cuisine. That is not, just to let y'all know, British. That's Ethiopian and Eritrean. Where the hell are the British food places in Oxford? Let's see. Italian, Japanese, falafel. Where the hell is the British food? Hold up. Caribbean.
Wendy's.
Where?
Oh, they got Wendy's down there at the bottom?
Shoot, they do. Oh my God.
Is that actually Wendy's?
Yeah, that's a Wendy's. Yeah.
Oh, that's weird. I didn't even know Wendy's was overseas like that.
Well, where the... Oh, number 1 Ship Street. That sounds British enough.
Yeah, whoa, it's the Pimp's restaurant.
Mr. Big. I'm not a criminal.
Wow.
I'm a businessman, and my business is crime.
They know when we pull up, they give us a full plate of lobster and seafood, governor.
And then we have the snails filled with things. This almost seems French to me, and I think it is French because it looks French inspired. And also, that building is as old as it can get. Like, that is like maybe 13th century, maybe. That's actually very impressive.
Oh man, I think Stephen Hawking might have lived there.
You have to find the center of the universe and where the black mold in this building is coming from. They drug me to keep me a vegetable. But also, yeah, the food actually does look pretty good here. It looks so good, they're all taking pictures of it, so it has to be good.
I love it when people pull up to a restaurant and get on their phone like that and just like play on their phone the whole time.
I love that. I love that so much. You just can't hate it. Who could dislike that ever? I'll be damned though, man. There is like no British food in Oxford.
King's Arm, Oxford?
This is a pub. Yeah, it's a pub. Well, I guess there's British food in the pub, right? You know, like there's a Yorkshire puddings. That counts. Let's see. Oh, that
know why it's called a
sticky
pub,
toffee
by the way?
pudding. Why it's called a pub?
Do you know why it is?
Yeah, because it's a public house, and then they shortened it down to
Yeah.
pub.
It's a public house. And in this house here, and like it, you know, it looks like a house on the inside of it. When you walk in, it looks like somebody's house, but they serve up food and beer and good stuff in it.
Do you know the historical origins of the public house?
The British people wanted a place to come eat and hang out, and they created a public house.
So, back in the day, Matthew, beer brewing, which was a common thing, ale and beer, specifically ale, back in the British days, was a very common thing to do on a cottage industry basis, meaning that it was done house to house. There was no large company or brewery that did it. So, a lady of the house, in their own house, you know, it would be a family's house, would brew up ale, but considering that ale would go bad in about 2 to 3 days, you had to get rid of it when you made it. So what they'd do is that they'd put out some sort of a sign in front of the house, or they just spread the word that so-and-so's house has ale in it, come get some, and, you know, they would charge people to get the ale. And so eventually over time, they started to make it to where they could turn it into a little bit of a business. So they would sell the ale, and they also possibly sell some cheap food dishes on the side. And so eventually these people's houses would turn into a public house because anyone could show up there pretty much at any time to get ale and some food. And that's where the public house came from. And then it evolved into the pub, and then the pub is an institution of British society these days.
That's interesting. It reminds me of how that grocery store in the United States came to be when they created a building. They put food and stuff in it, and they put cash registers in it, and then they called it Publix for Publix House.
Get the hell out of here. And then they pipe music in the store. Insert Tucker Carlson laugh here. But
a public house, cheaper groceries, Russia.
man, I'm telling that was close, honestly. But anyways, with that, I hope you all enjoyed the story of where the pub came from. Anyways, it is the alternative tuck shop. What the hell is a tuck shop? Oh,
wow.
I don't know what that is. It actually looks good. What do they have on their menu? Oh, look at this. Wow, they actually have a lot that you can put in these. So apparently it's, oh, there it is. That's what they are.
Damn, that's big.
Dude, that thing's kind of beefy, honestly. Like, let's see here. You can get them wrapped in cellophane, too. But pretty cool place, actually. It looks like they have a line around the corner to get in there.
Yeah, it's honestly, it reminds me of a New York bodega.
Man, that's a gas station.
Yeah, so where they sell food, too. They have people lined up.
Oh, really? They have, like, they sell food in gas station, like actual cooked food, or is it like, you know, like snack food?
Yeah. Yeah, and heard of that dude called Ak?
No,
you know,
I don't think
the
so.
Aki way?
No,
Yeah, bodega.
Man, I'll have to look into that. I always thought a bodega was literally just a gas station, but like an Italian American way of saying gas station.
No, man. They're serving up the Aki way. You know that guy that puts like the Frito-Lay like potato chips on top of the meat and chops it up with the cheese and you know, all that stuff. Like you can't forget the Bev kind of deal.
I never heard of this. I'm gonna have to look into it.
That's crazy. That guy's all over the place on the shorts.
Oh, dude, I don't look at shorts. I don't doom scroll, man. Like I watch like 40-minute long documentaries. But anyways, with that, it is time for us to move on to the next one.
All right, and our next one goes to Rod SCL, who puts in a $20 donation. And thank you very much, Rod, for that support. And we appreciate it very much. He said,
Hey!
hello, enforcers. Here in Chile, we also have a desert and tundra.
You know what? Everyone's kind of disproving me on my claims. Y'all actually do. I know y'all do. So you're actually right, and you are correct. Let me go see. Is America? Does America have the most biomes? Let me go check this. So America has the most variety of biomes on Earth. Like that actually is a fact. But a lot of countries actually do have tundra and like deserts as well, Chile included. So sorry, correction there. A lot of countries actually do have tundras and also deserts in the same place. But it does have the most diverse biosphere, I guess you could say, out of any country, as it has the largest number of biomes inside of it. So, pretty cool with that. But also, Chile is a very beautiful country. Have y'all seen Chile? Have y'all seen it? Take a gander at this. Look at that. You can go from up here in the desert all the way down to the beautiful mountains in the Patagonian mountain range. Really cool. But anyways, look at that.
That is beautiful, actually. That is Pokon.
But anyways, thank you once again for support and sharing that. That is a clarification to be made. I am very sorry, and I do apologize, and effective immediately, I am resigning the office of president. But still, thank you once again, and we are on to the next one.
And our next one is going to go to Purple Gerbil, who put in a 15 once again. And thank you very much, Mr. Gerbil, for that second support of the night. They said, do you think the UK and France are thinking of putting boots on the ground, meaning special forces, to conduct covert operations?
I'm doubting it. It appears that there's military liaisons going into Ukraine right now. I don't think special forces would get involved because if any of them were ever captured. And then they said, "Talk to us, you Ukrainian pig." And then they said, "Screw you, brother." And they go, "Oh, he's British," and then the cover's blown at that point. So I'd have to say, I generally doubt that they would be using special forces. Most likely just military liaisons to support the Ukrainians. And so with that, thank you once again. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And we have an 11 from Rick Hollander. And thank you, Rick, as well, for that $11 support. He said, for you both. And thank you. He said, every night I'm here. Bad side, it's nighttime, and I got to get up at 6 a.m. Oh, geez, man, that's tough. I've done that when I had the corgis over here for a few days, and that was a doozy. But thank you for staying my #1 news outlet.
Hey, and thank you so much for the kind words, and thank you for enjoying us as being your #1 news outlet. We love to be it. We love to be here. I promise you that. And I got to thank you once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. Because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to be here right now. And so with that, a big thanks to you once again. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Rye Guy SR, who puts in a 10. And thank you very much, Rye Guy, for that $10 support. And we do appreciate it very much. He said, just the start. Thanks for being awesome. And I'm already nervous about when the enforcer is gone. What shall I do at 10 p.m. Eastern? And what's going on with the ceasefire fire? Seems like there's not one.
There is really not one at this point. I would agree with that. And also, watch our reruns. Watch enforcer videos of older types. Watch anything you like. I mean, we have thousands and thousands of streams and videos combined at this point. There is an endless source of content to be had on this channel. It really is crazy because in terms of live content, I think we put out more than most people would over their entire career, just doing this for the time we've done it. And it's crazy. It's crazy. Because like we've been streaming pretty much nonstop for 1,128 days. It's 1,128 days from the start of war, and we're pretty much doing 3.5 hours on air daily, except for Mondays. So there's plenty of content to watch. A lot of people like to start from the beginning and work their way up to now, which is actually pretty cool. And so with that, thank you once again for support. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Nightmare Before Christmas, who puts in a 10. And thank you as well, Nightmare Before Christmas, for that support, and we appreciate that. They said, good news today, and please take a question and LSA.
Hey, and thank you so much for the support. And thank you for enjoying the good news. And we will make sure to get one from the chat in your honor. And so what do we got, Matthew?
And this one goes to Texian Dave, who says, would the U.S. get help from Japan?
I don't know in what aspect they would be getting help from Japan in, but if they had to, they can. So the answer to that, I suppose, would be yes. And so with that, I hope that addresses that the best I can. Thank you once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, did you see that deer? I was wanting to go back and show that. And also,
It looked like it was bow-legged.
man, it kind of did. And it's also, is that where the Squid Game's played? The mic didn't pick that up hardly at all. But,
Oh, you get the point. It was in the spirit of it all.
man, that's actually really cool.
Yes.
Man, that's
You know,
actually
James May actually went to where this place is right here with that little red little like arch thing in it. He actually stood right there near it.
Oh, well, there's a lot of those in Japan.
He stood next to that one.
There's many of these in Japan. They're everywhere, man.
I just know it. I just know it.
He knows it in his bones. He can feel it.
I can feel it in my bones.
Also, nice lighthouse right there. Nice lighthouse. I like that. Nice
Arr, Willem Dafoe in the lighthouse.
Keep the light on, Winslow, so that way I can go up there and do weird sexual things around the light. Like it's for absolutely no reason.
Turn the light down, Winslow. Turn the light down now.
No, turn the light up, Winslow. For some reason, it gets me going. Like, turn it up, Winslow. Like,
man, I'm projecting like dang Batman out there in the distance.
Oh my God! Why is the light? Why is he doing that? I'm like,
whoa, Winslow! Careful, Winslow!
Oh, Winslow! They're about to call it a wind blow. That movie made no sense. By the way, back in 2019, there was this movie that came out called The White House. Not The White House. The Lighthouse that had Willem Dafoe in it. Currently, they're making a movie called The White House. It's a reality TV show. But beyond that, they had a movie called The Lighthouse that came out in 2019 with Willem Dafoe in it. And I had heard that it was incredibly good. And so I was like, oh, well, I got to watch it. I mean, it sounds interesting, you know, and it's an interesting premise, you know, two lightkeepers in a lighthouse. So it turns out that, like, pretty much most of the movie is just Willem Dafoe going up into the actual light room where the light is and conducting odd sexual acts in front of the light. And then also they talked about having sex with a lobster at some point. And then they got in a fight. Willem Dafoe got killed. And then the other guy, he fell off the top of the lighthouse, and then the seagulls started picking away at his intestines, and he was still alive at the end of the movie. It made no sense. Made no sense. I didn't get the movie, and I honestly think it was pretty bad. But anyways, with that, we're on to the next one, Winslow.
And our next super chat goes to none other than Richard Hawkins, who puts in a $20 donation. And thank you, Richard Hawkins, as well, for that support and helping to keep the channel running. He said, keep up the good work, and LSA will prevail.
And thank you so much for the support, Richard Hawkins, and helping this channel to keep on running. Because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to keep this thing running and make it possible. So with that, thank you so much once again. And long live the Lee Spring Army, and the Lee Spring Army will never die. And Matthew, what are you laughing at?
The butchering at the beginning. Rickard. Thank you, Rickard.
It was funny. It was funny. But with that, thank you once again, and we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to John Bernard, who puts in a 10. And thank you very much, John Bernard, as well, for the support and helping to keep us running. He said, no shout out needed. Thank you. And we do appreciate that, John. And of course, you're helping to keep the channel running. And we also have a 10 from Brenda Alberts, who put in a 10 as well. And thank you, Brenda, also. And they said, thank you for your views and news. No shout out of the question on.
And thank you for the support. We always shout out every single super chatter. We want y'all to know that we do thank y'all for your support. And I got to thank you massively for that, because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to be here and keeping this channel running right now. So a big thanks to you once again. Hope that does address it the best I can. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Buzz Blades, who puts in a 10. And thank you as well, Buzz, for that support. They said, LSA forever. Take one from the chat. LSA forever. Take one from the chat.
Hey, and we will make sure to take one from the live chat. And long live the Lee Spring Army, and the Lee Spring Army will never die. And what do we got from the chat, Matthew?
And this one goes to Stantro Senro, who says, do you have a serious assessment of how many Russian ICBMs are probably duds?
Probably most of them. I would say maybe 60 to 70% of them if I had to take a rough shot in the dark. But once again, that's a rough shot in the dark, because the operational abilities of a missile is pretty hard to ascertain unless we can physically look at it. But that would be my best guess. And so with that, thank you once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. I hope that does address that live chat incredibly well. And we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to MJ Azevedo, who puts in a 10. And thank you, MJ, for that support. We appreciate it very much. And they said, I wonder when China will have to pound North Korea. Oh, boy. I'm positive they want a conventional war as far from them as possible and hard to press Taiwan if US goes to North Korea.
Well, I have to tell you that Xi Jinping has been looking at Pyongyang, and he's looking to pound. But in my opinion, I would say that they probably would never go to war with North Korea. They would probably just pressure them heavily because, once again, North Korea is nuclear armed. So if the Chinese want to go to the war with them, the North Koreans can nuke them just like they can nuke anyone. But I do thank you for the support and help with this channel to keep on running. I hope that does address that quite well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Marion Deemert, who puts in a $20 donation. And thank you very much, Marion, as well, for being a longtime channel legend. And once again, coming through clutch to support the channel. And we do appreciate it, Marion. And no comment to address, though. But Enforcer, what say you?
And a huge thanks to you, Marion Deemert, for the support and help of this channel to keep on running, because it is folks like you that make this thing a reality. So big thanks to you once again. And we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Nelson Johnson, who puts in a 10. And thank you very much, Nelson, as well, for that support. He said, come check out Nashville. We're still growing, I think.
Hey, maybe we'll come check out Nashville, perhaps. Maybe so. Maybe. Who knows? But we will have to see. But still, thank you once again. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And up next, we got a 5 from Peter Florence, who said LSA, and thank you, Peter, for that support. And we also have a 5 from BCR, who said excellent analysis.
Hey, thank you to the both of you for the support, and thank you for saying that it was excellent analysis, because we try our damnedest, I tell you, we really do. And so with that, a big thanks to you once again. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And we have a 5 from Diffuse56, a longtime channel legend, by the way, who makes a return once again tonight. And it's good to see you, Diffuse, once more. He said, hey, guys, I'm an oldie, and I was on the night of the original Lee Spring.
Hey, well, nice to hear that you've been around for 3 years. And I got to thank you for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. Because it is folks like you who have made this thing possible for many years now. And I got to thank you once again for supporting this channel and helping you to keep on running, because you are inspired by that same LSA excellence. And so with that, thank you once again. Hope that has addressed that well. And we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to So Many Regrets, who puts in a 5. They said, Ayo, Holmes, if you're looking for a new crib, I got you, fam. Just pop on over to Emerald Street and Dumont Avenue in Queens. Here's your subway fare.
And where was that specifically again in Queens?
Emerald Street and Dumont Avenue.
Emerald Street, but we want it in Queens.
Down in Brooklyn, in Tribeca.
Let's take a gander here. This is Emerald Street. And where was the other one? Emerald and Dumont?
Emerald Street and Dumont.
All right, here we are. Here's the intersection. Holy smokes!
The hell are you talking about right there and they're on the right?
This is Leningrad, believe it. This is
yeah. Man, I feel like if I walk down through here, I might get might not come back out.
You drive your car through here, you come out on cinder blocks. Like, this is a crazy place. Oh my god, I never expected that. That is insane. Oh my god. Wait a minute, is the whole area like this?
Zoom out for a second.
Look, it's just fine over here.
Wait, yeah, go back and zoom out real quick. I'm curious to see where this is actually. Zoom on out, like where I can see the whole area. Oh, okay. I know where this is now. This isn't Far Rockaway, is it? Kind of looks like it kind of is.
Man, this is near East Egg and West Egg.
That's right outside JFK. That's where it's at.
Yeah, right outside of one of the runways, like one of the approaches. That must be why the property value's low.
That's where I fly my 747 when I land on Flight Simulator.
Yeah, this is where you fly your F-47, Matthew. Dead on. but also, Pitkin Yard? What is it, Pitkin Yard? Ew, shit, it's nasty New York subways. I don't like these, by the way. I think these things are, like, hideous. Like, I don't like them. I like the Long Island Railroads. Well, I like that one. That one's actually pretty nice. But I don't like the old New York subway trains, the ones that are usually used. Like, they just, I don't know. They're, like, ratty looking, really. You know, like, I don't know how to explain it. I just don't like
that's
them.
kind of like the allure of the thing, isn't it? They have these cars here And also, by the way, there's a lot of rats in the subway system, so they make it real ratty, so that way they feel at home.
I don't like this at all, man. Like, I don't like this one bit. I don't like these older subways. I just think they're terrible. But
Man,
anyway,
those rats have the New Yorkers trained so well. I saw a video yesterday of some guy who was filming randomly in a subway, and this dude walked around a corner, like down there waiting for the subway, and he walked around the corner, and there was a humongous rat, like sitting around this corner, and the guy filming just said, "Walk away, bro. Walk away. Turn around and walk away." And the guy was like, "What's wrong with this rat? Like, what's wrong with him anyway? He's not going to do nothing." So the rat turned his head real slow and looked at the guy. So then the guy said, "Ah, shit, I think I was going to walk off." The guy turned around and just walked away. And that big rat picked up like a whole bag of food and walked down the subway like thing. And everybody just got out of the way of this rat. And it just went on his business. It was like a king rat.
the giant rat that makes all of
It
the
honestly
rules.
was, man. I was shocked. Everybody knew just like keep out of the way of that rat, man. That rat was like in charge of the place.
Man, honestly, man, they ought to allow in New York open season, take some billy clubs and just go down and start beating rats. You know, like honestly, like they ought to clear the thing out. You know, it's like if the rats are that bad, that you got king rats in some of the stations, you just got to start giving open season to some folks to go down there and start wiping them out. You know.
Man, I don't think the billy club's gonna do it. This rat was so big, it was like I think a 45 is going to have to do it for the rat.
All right, open season. Just let everyone go down there and start capping rats. Like that's honestly, it's like clear them out. We can't have that kind of a thing here. But man, honestly, this whole area over here in Brooklyn, it's interesting. It's not bad actually.
Did those jumbo rats make it up to the street, or did they stay down below?
I think they stay below, for the most part. Like, at least from what I know. I might be wrong on that. Also, they have a shipbuilding yard in the middle of New York still. I didn't know that. Wow, that's actually really neat. Like, they actually have dry docks and everything here still. Didn't know that there were any shipbuilders left in New York, but there they are, right there. Oh, that's the Brooklyn Navy Yard. Oh, okay, never mind. There's no shipbuilders left in New York then. That's a Navy Yard. They only do refits there. Let's see.
Let's see. Also, Marion said, as an 18-year-old, I was in the New York subway when the train came, and I saw those huge rats scramble, and I was sick for 4 days. Honestly, like I'll just be honest. The rats that are in there, I'm not scared of most animals except for snakes. I will get the snake whenever I see one. That's going down. But those rats in there, honestly, I'd be a little bit intimidated by the rats because I saw that video the other day. I was like, huh, like that's weird. Like some of these people who seem like they're not exactly, what you'd call like wusses or something like that. They're like, bro, walk away from the rat, walk away, turn and walk away. It's like, what are these rats capable of? It's like, why are these people acting like this? Are they really like vicious or something? Like, what's up with that?
Well, man, I mean, they're from New York, man. That rat might turn around and go, "Hey, I'm walking in," and then like assault you or something. You never know. Like honestly, though, man, if they're that dangerous, I would say that they're a menace to the city, and then the city of New York ought to be doing something about it. You know?
How do they get that big though? It's like what like how I've never seen a rat those large though. Those rats in New York are different.
Let's pull up New York rats. Like we ought to find them easy. Jesus. Dude, there's a million pictures of these things.
Do they have like a big rat? Is there a small rat?
Yeah, look at that. Look at that. It's
damn, man. That's like one of them. That was like one of them. Yeah, those things are freaking huge.
Dude, that's a damn dog. That's a dog-sized rat.
Who the hell's picking this thing up? 41-pound rat.
I don't know. It kind of looks a little fluffy, but beyond that, what the hell? Oh, dude, hold up. Let's see here. My God.
Damn. Yeah, that is literally just like the rat. These people are brave as hell picking these things up because the way the other people were acting, they're like killers or something.
That thing is the size of a raccoon, at least. Maybe even a little bigger. Maybe like more like possum sized. That is insane. Look at these. Oh my God, dude, they're freaking huge.
Bro, they're freaking like what the hell is that?
Well, they're dead.
Wait a minute, they're like what are they doing hanging them outside?
I don't know about that. What the hell's that?
Oh, dear Lord.
I'm not going to lie. The rats ought to be taken care of in New York City because if they're getting that big, those things are threats. Like, they ought to have animal control down there all day long, just zapping rats if they can, because that's insane.
Yeah, I wouldn't be for that, honestly. Like, and also they don't. Also, it's not like you can start, busting caps on rats in the subway or something like that. You can't do that. But it's like it seems like somebody would go down there, like capture them or something, or just like spray it with something or do something like that.
Oh, dude, look at that. It's not really like the Seinfeld subway layout, but it's kind of close, you know.
Yeah, I don't like the mustard and ketchup seats.
Yeah, I always like these floors that have like the little galaxy like coating thing on them because you always know that they smell of piss every time. Like you can guarantee yourself anywhere where those little floors, linoleum sorts of things are on the bottom of a vehicle or anything for that matter. It always has this odd smell of urine, even if no one's peed on it. I think that stuff just emanates that smell. Um, Also, man, the entrances. I'm not gonna lie, dude. Like the New York City subway system aged like milk after they built it in like the 1910s, and like the late 1800s. It didn't age well at all.
Yeah, it really didn't, honestly. Like these subways, like some people like glorify them, like, oh look, it's like the subway font and everything. It's all fancy. I personally don't care for it.
I don't really. It was cool back
Did
when they
you?
made it. It's 50th Street, but it's cool back when they made it, but it just looks terrible now. Like it didn't age well at all. That's why people like honestly, man, like it works though. And then people go and look at China, like, wow, look at their subway system. It's so modern and clean. It's like, yeah, because it was built like 7 years ago out of tofu treg. It's like this is 100 or over 100 years old for the most part. All of New York City subways, and no one's ever refurbished them, so they look old as shit, and they are like they really are. For that reason. Like, look at that. That would have passed in the 1920s.
This looks
Not
like a
anymore.
public, like the entrance to a public bathroom or something.
It really honestly does. Uh, oh,
That's
dude.
honestly how the interior of like our school bathroom used to look, like where we went to school.
Yeah, it kind of did, didn't it? Yeah, it looked a lot like that. But still, this place, man, New York City subway is a rough looking place. But anyways, with that, it is time for us to move on and into the next one.
All right. And our next super chat goes to Richard Hawkins once again, who this time puts in a $20 donation once more. And thank you very much, Richard, for the second support of the night. And we do appreciate that. He said, you can call me Rickard, or you can call me Richard, or you can call me Rich. Slav Ukraine. And he's flexing on him with the last one. You can call me Rich. That's either his name or he's Rich, one or the other. But thank you very much, Richard, in all seriousness, for that support. And Enforcer, what say you?
I got my Rolly. Put me on that. Thank you, Rich.
You're not rich until you got a Rolly.
What color is your Rolly? Put me on that. Thank you, Rich, for the support. You are rich. And I got to thank you once again for helping this channel to keep on running. And Slava Ukrainian, Ram Slava. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Jack Ray, who puts in a 5. And thank you, Jack, as well for that support. He said, I've gotten an impression that the U.S. officials have a personal grudge against Ukraine. I have no idea what caused it. And what are your ideas on it?
I think, like, to be honest, like, I'm just gonna be honest here. I think it has something to do with the whole impeachment thing that happened back in 2019. Maybe that's probably where the bias comes from. But beyond that, I couldn't even tell you. I wouldn't even know. I wouldn't have a clue. But still, I thank you for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Andrew Honeygut, who puts in a 5. And thank you very much, Andrew, as well, for the support. He said the negotiations appeared to be an exercise in obfuscation. Given the duplicitous and disingenuous nature of Putin, what should be the next step in LSA?
I would say the next step should just be to cut negotiations and continue full support for Ukraine until the Russians relent from their stupid and asinine position. And so with that, I thank you once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Uncovered Cube 7, who puts in a 2 as well. And thank you very much, Uncovered Cube, for that $2 support and not leaving a comment, though. But thank you very much for supporting the channel, and we appreciate that. We also have a 2 from LSA Sergeant Figment, and he said, hit the like button, LSA. That's an order.
Hey, and please do hit the like button. That is an order. We've hit 3,700 likes, quite a lot actually. And so with that, thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And we have a super chat that just came in from Halligan218, who puts in a 10. And thank you very much, Halligan, as well, for supporting the channel. And he said, New York City has an official rat czar position appointed by the mayor to deal with the issue. Also, that rat inflatable you saw is named Scabby the Rat, and is used at union protests in New York and great stream tonight.
Oh, because it's a Union scab. Honestly, that's actually pretty funny. That's some New York culture right there, man. They put the rats into calling the scabs rats. Like honestly, that's actually kind of funny. But beyond that, I got to thank you for support and sharing that information with us. And I didn't know that they had a rat czar, but the rat czar needs to be doing their job a little bit more. Man, they're probably going to start hanging the rats over Brooklyn Bridge, like executed convicts, like as a warning to other rats or something at this point. Because it's so bad, like with those rats, from what I've heard, really all over the city. But it's kind of like that with any major city. There's always a problem. Crazily enough, if y'all don't know, London's problem is foxes. There is about 12,000 wild foxes living in the city of London, like in the middle of London. So it's been a bit of an issue. But anyways, with that,
I'd rather deal with foxes than rats, Governor.
I agree, because when you go and look at the London foxes, let me go and show you this. They are cute.
Yeah, I like those things, actually. They're not scrappy looking like our foxes, really. But these things stink, though, and also I think they can bite.
Oh, yeah, they bite, and they do stink to high hell. But they are cute. Look at that one.
I like these things right here.
Yeah, I mean, it's better than a rat, like to be frank. Like, look at this one. Oh, that one might be deranged, but
Man, that one honestly is deranged. It looks like it's just going, bleh.
Man, that one looks like it's just waiting for this guy to come around, like going so I can attack him. It's like going, and it's like, whoa. Someone call him. Look, here's one running in front of 10 Downing Street, actually.
Oh, it sure is. Look at that.
Man, urban foxes is honestly an interesting problem to have. It's better than rats, I'll give it that. Yeah, oh, bro, that one ate a rat. like that one killed a rat, dude. What if they fixed the New York rat problem with foxes?
Ah, man, they could. Look at that scrappy one right there, though. Like, go back up a little bit. It was all greasy. Look at this one. Yeah,
This
right
one?
there.
Oh,
Man, that's a greasy looking one right there. That thing looks like it's had better days.
that one's mangy, man. Like that one's got the mange. Like, oh my goodness. This was about to eat that cat. Like, promise. But let's see. Dude, honestly, these pictures are a trip. Like,
Look at that goofy one right here on BBC London that was on the TV. They got the goofiest one. Say, what do you think about the crime problem here in London, sir? He said, huh? Who, me?
dude, this one said, "Have you ever been down to Eelsey? Shit's terrifying." Like, it looks like it's scary. Like,
Oh, honestly, it looks like a decently good-hearted fox of all of them, but still, look at that one laying in the road.
why are they so
Damn.
photogenic? Why are they so photogenic, dude? It's like they look at cameras and like pose for them and everything.
Yeah, look at that one laying in the street right there. Bro, what the hell's up with the headline, though? Fox found hanged by belt outside central London home in Westminster. Bro, what
Oh
the?
my
That fox?
god. Bro, someone just went out there and like manhandled a fox and hung it from the nearest.
I mean, Governor,
gate.
get on his belt.
Dude, someone said, "I love Britain, 8 foxes, simple as." Like, freaking hung the poor thing. Like, man, like I'm sure they're nuisances, but man, that's actually kind of sad because these aren't rats. These are actually pretty cute,
Yeah, those are like kind of like some of these. Some of these kind of look like reminiscent of Mr. Corgi a little bit.
Yeah, a little bit. Dude, honestly, man, you wouldn't want Mr. Corgi around that guy on that fox. He'd be like, "Come here, 8 foxes, simple as." Trying to like grab Mr. Corgi. It's like, man, that'd be an issue. But anyways, with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Quantum Fighter, who puts in the 5 once more. And thank you very much, Quantum Fighter, for that support. It said, "I saw a tree-clad train in a John Cleese film from the 70s today. Extra points if you find it. And thanks for rapping. Don't crap on FR food. LOL. LSA. Live chat."
Thank you for the support and help with this channel to keep them running. I won't crap on the French food too much. It's just not my taste. And I would try and find the train, but sadly we are starting to run a little bit out of time. And Matthew, how many super chats do we have left?
We have 2 left.
And yes, and we want to make sure that we can wrap this thing up on time tonight because I have to tend to some other stuff on this trip that I'm taking because there's been some complications. But anyways, with that, we thank you once again for support, Quantum Fighter, and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our live chat question goes to David Tablet, who says, is there any new information about the missing soldiers today?
No, they're still missing. They're trying to recover the vehicle out of 16 feet of water, but they haven't found the soldiers or any sign of them still. So with that, I hope that does address that somewhat well, at least the best I can. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Fuqua, who puts in a 2 and says, can you do a short video on the backstory of the LSA one day?
Maybe so. I think that'd be a Patreon exclusive because it probably wouldn't be that much popular outside of fan circles. So we'd probably put that on Patreon. But one day we might. I still have to get around though to editing up and sprucing up the orchestra footage for the LSA anthem and the Star Spangled Banner, and also Columbia, the Gem of the Ocean. I have to do all of that here soon, all of it. And so I gotta get to that first. But still, thank you once again for supporting and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And we have a 2 from Dubstep Kid 801. And thank you very much for that support. They said, Matt, check out the Bobcat picture I tagged you in. And I did. I just took a look at it in the Discord, by the way. And I like that picture personally. All them Bobcats around that, the Bobcat right there. I like that one a lot, actually. But thank you very much for the support once again. And with that, guess what, Dubstep Kid? You were going to take us right into the live chat questions proper, because we're now fresh out of Super Chats. And once again, huge shout out to everybody for supporting the channel once more and helping to keep it running. But it is now time to get the Morse code decoders of the stream. And tonight we had Cliff Simonson, Mark Hodges, Earl Bernew, Kevin J, Paul Schultz, David Millsaps, Her Royal Fluffiness, Arabella Garbo, Jenny Dog, and Norm Pritchett. They said the Morse code says Russia is not making a good case for themselves with the mass surrenders going on, LLT, LSA.
And ding, ding, that's the sound of money. Y'all got that dead on the nail. That was the Morse code message of the night. I got to congratulate y'all for getting that correct for the 1,128th day of the war, because y'all have gotten that correct time and time again. And so with that, I hope that does address that well. And we're going to answer as many questions as we can before we reach the midway point of this hour. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Purple Gerbil, who says, how many sorties can an F-18 fly before needing extensive maintenance?
I'm not entirely sure, actually. I believe overhaul or extensive maintenance, like you're talking about, happens after several hundred. I actually believe at this point these days it's usually after 1,000 hours of flight time or more, or several thousand hours. But it's not a couple of hundred. I was about to say a couple of hundred, and I think that'd be incorrect. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that well, and we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Rodney Hikes, who says, Matt, why doesn't Ukraine target all the rails used to import North Korean weapons to Crimea?
Rails are very hard to damage and very easy to replace. Unlike a road, which actually, crazily enough, roads actually take more to make than a railroad. Railroads are fairly easy because all you have to do is pretty much level the ground below the rails, lay out your ballast, lay out your... let's see here. How does it go? Lay out your ballast, and then you lay out your ties. Then you lay out more, well, actually, you lay out the rails, lay in more ballast, and then tamp the ballast, and then pretty much the rail is good to go. With a road, there's a multiple layer suit. So you can bomb a road and cause a large amount of damage, actually. It would take a good bit to fix that, and it would take a pretty stable kind of a condition that wouldn't be in the middle of a war to be able to fix it. But with a railroad, it's actually quite simple. If you blow up a railroad segment, all they have to do is pretty much cut out the affected segments of ties, and then bring in replacement segments, and then just thermite weld them together. So it's actually pretty easy to fix, and the damage wouldn't really be significant. So that's why it's really impossible to do that. And so with that, we are on to the second to last question of the night.
All right, and this one's going to go to Dalton LMAO, who says, so do y'all think that under extremely high circumstances, let's see, wait a minute, hold on. He said, so do y'all think that under extremely high circumstances, Ukraine could develop its own nuclear weapon?
I think it is possible. It would take them some time and some effort to be able to do that, but it is possible that the Ukrainians could create a nuclear weapon. And so with that, I hope that does address that well. And we are on to the final question of the night. And so who was the lucky last person to throw in the lucky last question of the night?
And this one goes to Hurt Citizen, who says, did you see NATO directly threaten Putin by full name if he were to touch Poland?
I did see that. It was a very good statement, but NATO is only as good as its joining members are. So if the joining members are weak, then NATO is weak, regardless of what the Secretary General is saying in Brussels. But I did like the statement. It was good in nature, and it was well intended, but hopefully we'd see that actually would be followed through. But with that, I hope that does address that the best I can, and we've reached the end of tonight's stream exactly at 3 hours and 29 minutes. I got to thank all of you all so much once again for watching. It's been an absolute absolute honor and a pleasure to be able to run this stream for all of y'all tonight. We reached a peak viewership of 11.7 thousand people. Well, actually 10.7 thousand people. Correction there, I misstated that. And we also had a peak viewership of 72,200 people tonight. Overall viewership, that is. I have to say that we're entirely honored and appreciative of having all of y'all here, and we hope that y'all did enjoy the news tonight. If you did and you're new to the channel, please make sure to subscribe. We run news like this day in and day out, every single day, 24/7 as much as we can, short war videos and streams. But I do want to remind everyone again, for the 5,000 people who are here, that we will not be running live streams from this Saturday to next Tuesday. So tomorrow will be the last stream before the break comes into effect. And so with that, I hope to see you all tomorrow at 10 p.m. Eastern time for the last live stream, at least for a short while, and then we'll get back to streaming next week. And so with that, thank you all so much once again for watching. Good night, good luck, take care, stay safe, Slava Ukraini, and long live the Lee Spring Army. The Lee Spring Army will never die.
And with that, folks, thank you all once again for joining us all tonight with all 72,000 people that joined us. A huge stream tonight, by the way. And be sure to join us again midday tomorrow for the next short war video, if there is enough news to cover midday, and also on the next nightly war news stream at 10 p.m. Eastern. But with that, thank you all for watching once again, and Slava Ukraine. Hear 'em, Slava. Get some rest, and good night.